Sir, you're charged with especially aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated assault. And you're charged with theft of a firearm worth less than $2,500.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Hello and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict, and boy, do I have a case for you today.
Why is the dog chewing on this guy?
I think they have got the wrong guy there.
Got the wrong guy, and the dog was biting him.
He roughing him up quite a bit. There's a lawsuit.
9 out of 10 judges prefer watching the Recovery Addict live stream in their court.
The fireworks are not done.
Oh, getting commentary on the case.
Dahil Anglican police very much. I didn't ask you to interrupt me.
Literally not true.
Oh, for Trump's sake.
All right, I think I'm almost ready. There we go. Hello. There we go. Can't figure out how to turn the sound down. Like it's not getting any quieter. It's because I have it a slider, not on the keyboard. Good morning. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Monday to you. Happy Monday. Hope you had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I did. Let's see. Need to do this. I'm minus 2 iPads. Well, I'm minus 1 iPad this morning because Mrs. RA is. We're starting the new school year for the kids. Basically, we never really stop, but we're starting this is like a move to the next level type thing. And as part of that, and as a requirement in the state we live in, the kids have to go through a test, a certain type of test. And so we put the test at the front end of the school year just to see what they remembered over the summer. And so they're all doing the test this week, which means they have the iPads. So I do not have an iPad, which is bad because that's where I keep all my notes. So we need to have only a couple birthdays every day or else I'm going to forget. So if you have a birthday today, please let me know before it goes too far. And if I miss one, mods, if you can let me know as well. All right. That's the mods are saying good morning. Wonderful. Let's see. We have a couple things. No cheating, little RAs. This is a self-assessment test. If you cheat on a self-assessment test, where does that leave you? All right, we have Mind a Laptop. Thank you. That's really good. That's really good water. Okay, go old school and use paper and pencil. Wait. First, I have to say, Stacy S. with the butterflies. Thank you very much. You were first in chat today. I don't know if this is a first time offense for you. I was thinking you might have won once before, but either way, you're fairly new to the as far as the criminal record goes here. So, congratulations being first in chat today, Stacy. The prize, punishment, penalty, whatever it is you want to call it, that goes along with that is internet ownership, but not ownership in the way like, oh goody, I get to sell it and keep it and make money from it. Well, you can everything but the sell. You mostly just have to upkeep. It's repair. It's maintenance. That's what ownership comes with. Stacy says, I promise not to break anything, keep everything running. Yes, it is. Okay, first offense. Congratulations, Stacy. That's a big thing. I realize it is actually very difficult to win the internet because we have some very we have some habitual offenders who like to win the internet, and so being able to beat them out is very, very that's a skill. I'm impressed, Stacy. Really am. Congratulations. Thank you so much for being here. It would not be the same without you, Stacy. Look forward to you maintaining the internet today. Also, we have Christy G, member for 3 months. Love my RA family. Thank you, Christy. I love your support. You're amazing. Thank you. Let's see. With all privileges comes responsibility. This just has responsibility. There's not really any privileges that go along with it. Let's see, what else do we have? I was looking for something that happened over the weekend. Let's see, go old school, use paper and pencil. The test is online. That's why we like it so much, because we actually have to maintain. It's funny. If you're into homeschooling, you know this, but every state has different rules. Unless you're in Alaska, which basically says we don't care what you do with your kids. You sort of have to comply with a couple of rules. Some say you have to be in school a certain number of days. Some say you have to be in school a certain number of hours. Some say you have to have this certain level of education to teach your kids. Some say you have to be you can homeschool, but then you have to take the school. It's just, there's all these rules. And in North Carolina, some of the rules are you have to take attendance. So you have to mark down when they're there. You have to test them every year to just, it doesn't say to make sure they pass. You just have to test them. They could fail every test, and I think you'd still be in compliance. You also have to be able to have those test records available if they ever want to come and inspect them. And so it's easier to do it online that way. Anyway, courthouse criminals, welcome. Good to have you here. Do you hate the water? The water pour? I'm sorry. Let's see. We have to do 180 days, 4 hours each day. Yeah, you know the rules for your state, and if you're ever going to move and plan on homeschooling, know the rules for the state you're going to move to, because it's almost like moving to a new country where the laws are completely different. And sometimes it's like, hey, I can work with that, and other times it's like, that's sort of a deal killer for me. All right, take notes on pencil and paper. I was thinking you wanted the kids to use pencil and paper. I have loads of pens in the other room. Checking the floor because that's where I normally put them. I have nothing. I meant for you to go old school, keep birthday on paper. I think we don't have any birthdays this morning. That's what I'm thinking. So maybe that'll save us a little bit of time. 80s Music Man attempts to sneak in unnoticed. It was failed attempt. I'm stunned at the idea. Lois Cox. I said it right 3 times. It never occurred to me that I would be the one that had to use, the old school stuff. I'm the digital guy. I'm all the tech stuff. Whatever happened to James and Cindy in Simpson's room? Last week they did have a court appearance, but it was not in Judge Simpson's room. It was a pre-sentence investigation hearing or something. I think it was, I don't know what the outcome was, but they still have their final sentencing appearance in Judge Cedric's courtroom. So Cedric Simpson. Anyway, so that's still coming. So nothing's really changed. We just missed one of their little appointments. Let's see. I was trying really hard to remember how to say your name. How did Brandy tell me to say it? Jaco? Was it Jaco? I watched the podcast Friday night just a minute ago, and you got my name right the second to last try. Oh, the second last try. I have to see which one it is. I'll have to go back. Jaco. No, says Jaco. Yako? Is it a Y sound? I get conflicting answers from different people. And so I think I trust everyone, first of all, and then I go ahead and do it that way, and then I'm wrong as well. Can you spell it out phonetically in crayon as you would to a child? That might help me a little bit better. I've called him Jacko for a while. That's a no. Yako? According to Woo? If Woo got it right, Yako, please let me know. All right. Where are we? We're right here. We're getting ready for court. That's what we're doing. Move this over here. We have a couple fun things coming up here in the near future, like today. Let me turn this there. Shrink it down. There's our courtroom. Boom. Okay. We'll keep that there. This goes full screen. All right, a couple fun things, and the least of which is the fact that we have searched far and wide for someone to help us with our exercise efforts during court, during the little breaks where we need a little stretch. And none other than Mr. Tommy Randolph replied to my request saying, hey, I would be willing to lead us in a little bit of courtroom yoga And so I said, all right. So today he's going to lead us a little bit of courtroom yoga. I'm looking forward to him doing that. So bring your yoga mat and get ready, because you never know when the instructor is going to be like, okay, it's happening right now. So be watching for that. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Which one was yes? Which one? Jaco? I need to know. I've got the yes, yes, yes part. But there were like 7 different pronunciations between that and... what is the smudge light in the top right-hand corner of your screen, or is it mine? It's mine. That shows you the smudge light, what it's coming from. Is that a little better? Oh man, I don't know. I think you might have to change your name. Yako. Maybe you need to have him come on the podcast. That way I can hear him say it in his own voice, and then we'll know. We just need him to call in. Yeah, we could do that. The burner phone is always an option.
Scratch all that. Oh, that was terrible. I apologize.
Yes, it was. All right. Anyway, in disbelief that the goatee still lives. It does. It is sort of growing on me. I'm enjoying it right now. It may go, because I'm reaching the point where I need a haircut quite badly, where if I go much longer without a haircut, it would significantly contribute to my weight loss program. So we're going to see if I can get a haircut. And when I get my haircut, I might think, oh, this needs to go too. So we'll see.
I was kicked back, taking it easy.
All right. Let's see. Are we ready? Is there anything else we need to cover? Can we just kick off court and get started here? Yep. Got the dad jokes going early in the morning. Yako. That was perfect. Yako. How am I going to remember that, though? Of all the different ways I've tried to pronounce your name. Finally caught up on this trial. I was able to watch the stream live. Well, we're catching up on Fridays. We've got day 6 to watch right now, so we're getting set for that. Well, apparently I'm shopping on Amazon. What am I shopping for right now? Ah, yes, a dive bag. Because, I do so much diving that I need a diving bag to hold all the goodies that I find when I'm diving. I've never done it before in my life, and here I am searching for, in my head I'm thinking, I'd like to go scuba diving and metal detecting underwater, right? That would be fun. And then in my head I think, well, if I do that, I'm going to need something to carry all the treasure I find. Because it doesn't occur to me that I would never find any treasure. It's just, I jump straight to...
I object.
I jumped straight to the fact that I'm going to need to carry all this stuff. So I've been shopping for a dive bag. Anyway, I will continue shopping at a later point. Let's get to underway here. I think Judge is about to call everyone to order right now. Let's see what we've got.
Scratch all that. Oh, that was terrible. I apologize.
Okay, I think we're good there. Hang on. I can hear some courtroom noise. Okay, let's go ahead and transition over. There we go.
Bring the jury.
So we are on day 6 here. The jury's here already.
We are back on the record and C-250966, stating the evaluation of Thomas Randolph. In the record that Mr. Randolph is present with his attorney, Deputy District Attorney on behalf of the state. Do both parties stipulate to the presence of our jury? Yes, Your Honor. We do.
I do as well.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome. Thank you very much for showing back up today. I know it's been a long time. We're getting near the end, I swear. All right, State, you may call your next witness.
Dr. Gavin.
My audio's way low. I've got to get this fixed. Yes, this is Friday afternoon. We're catching up on before court starts live at lunchtime this morning.
I do. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Lisa Gavin, Lisagavin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Gavin, how are you employed?
I'm a forensic pathologist, medical examiner here in Clark County.
And what does that mean you do?
I do autopsies or medical legal death investigations on sudden and unexpected deaths here in Clark County, as well as several adjacent counties.
And what is your educational background and training that allows you to work in that capacity?
I went to medical school at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine. I did a pathology residency at Hartford Hospital in Connecticut. I did a surgical pathology fellowship at Hartford Hospital in Connecticut. I did a forensic pathology fellowship at the Office of the Medical Investigator in New Mexico, and then I came here to Clark County. I have a medical license to practice in the state of Nevada, and I'm board certified in anatomic pathology and forensic pathology.
And what is forensic pathology?
In general, forensic pathology is a division of pathology overall, and it's a group of physicians that are pathologists who also specialize in doing medical legal death investigations, so both the medical and some of the legal aspects of investigating why someone has died and the manner in which they have died.
And in your work at the Clark County Medical Examiner's Office, how many autopsies do you think you've conducted over the years?
Probably close to 4,000, 4,500 or so.
And in that capacity, have you been called upon to render an opinion as an expert in the area of forensic pathology?
Yes.
Now, can you just give us a general overview of the process by which an autopsy is conducted at the Clark County Medical Examiner's Office?
In general, the kind of medical legal death investigation begins with the identification of the body itself, and then that body will be called into our office, and then our investigators will triage the call and then determine whether or not the case kind of falls under our jurisdiction. If it does fall under our jurisdiction, then they will go out to do their own investigation of that body as evidence, and during that investigation they will take photographs, document anything that they see, and then place the body into a body bag, and then that body bag is then transported to our office. Generally, when the body is considered to be in a suspicious circumstance, that body bag may be sealed, and that's when the two eyelets of the body bag come together, and then those eyelet zippers are kind of sealed with a plastic seal through those eyelets, and it's clamped in place. And then generally a photograph is taken of it intact at the scene, and then intact when it arrives into the office. Then we begin what we call kind of a processing of the body, where the body will then be photographed in layers, I like to say, as the body is represented, as it's brought in the body bag. And then if there's any clothing or anything like that, that'll be removed, and then the body will be photographed. And then if the body is dirty in any way, it'll be cleaned, and then the body will be photographed again. And then in that process, any identification of any types of injuries or the like will also be photographically documented. During that process, the forensic technician is usually doing those photographs, and then usually law enforcement may be there simultaneously following us, doing their own photographs at the same time and gathering any trace evidence that they may need during that process. Likewise, the forensic pathologist may come in during that process and start to observe what's on the body, and then the forensic pathologist will also do kind of a detailed examination of the body externally, and then the process will be to move on to the internal examination, which is classically what people think of as the autopsy process itself.
And at the Clark County Medical Examiner's Office, are case numbers assigned to each autopsy case?
Yes, so each of those cases, as soon as the body is identified and determined to be our jurisdiction, the body will be given a case number, and anything associated with that case and that investigation will be associated with that number, including photographs and any kind of reports.
Okay, and then all reports, I think I heard you say all reports, photographs, radiographs, toxicology, all those reports would be filed essentially under that same case number?
That's correct. So anything associated with the case will be filed under that case number.
Okay. And in your capacity as a medical examiner, have you been called upon to review cases and render opinions based on what you've reviewed in court?
Yes.
Even cases where you weren't the person who performed the autopsy?
Yes.
And is that just because doctors move around, or?
Yeah, some doctors may die, some doctors may retire, some doctors may move to other jurisdictions as well, and you're not able to have them come back in terms of timing to be able to do testimony. So there's often a cause for an in-house doctor to render an opinion on an autopsy case that's been performed by another forensic pathologist. And
is that an unusual circumstance for you to testify on about an autopsy that you didn't personally conduct?
No.
Well, let me ask you this. In terms of an autopsy amongst medical examiners, can you explain what's meant by the term anatomical position?
Yes, the anatomical position would be as if the body is standing, if you will, with the feet flat on the floor, the arms are down at the side, and the palms are facing forward. So that would be the anatomical position of the body. Obviously, in most situations, people are more dynamic and they're moving their arms, limbs, and bending their body, so they may not be in that exact position. But in general, the forensic pathologist will use that anatomical position to describe body locations.
And is that used in your field as sort of a reference point in order to describe injuries?
Yes.
And then it would be the reference point for like injuries of like on the left side or right side, that type of thing, or
yes.
Up or down?
Yes, and it would be relative to that individual's left side, that individual's up or down.
Okay. Can you explain, before we start getting into the autopsies in this case, can you explain to the members of jury what soot or stippling is?
Soot is related to the gunpowder that may be present within a projectile as it's coming out of the barrel and then also coming out from the kind of the projectile portion, the jacket portion of the projectile as it's being propelled out of the weapon. So that soot material generally can burn off before that projectile hits a target, but if the projectile and the muzzle of the weapon are close to each other, you have less likelihood that that soot is going to burn off before it reaches the target area. So the closer that the muzzle area is to the actual target, the more likelihood you are to see some soot on that target, the target often being, in my case, the skin surfaces. Likewise, there's also some gunpowder particles that can be in there, again helping to propel the projectile. And those gunpowder particles, depending on how far apart the muzzle is from the target being the skin, the gunpowder particles may or may not have time to burn off before they reach that point. If the gunpowder particles do not have time to burn off before they impact on the target, then you're going to see what's called stippling, these kind of burn abrasions on the skin surface, because the muzzle has been closer to the target being the skin, such that they haven't had time to burn off before they get there.
Okay, so soot and stippling are artifacts or things that you observe at autopsy in the case of gunshot wound cases?
Correct.
And soot would be just like a closer range shot that you would see maybe on the skin, like a dark staining?
Yes.
And then stippling would be the particles of gunpowder actually burning the skin?
It kind of burns or abrates into the skin and creates what we call stippling.
Okay. Now, how close does the barrel need to be to the skin in order for you to see those things?
It differs depending upon the weapon and depending on the ammunition. So in general, we have general ranges that we can use for most like handguns or rifled type weapons versus shotguns. So in general, when a muzzle is at least 24 inches or so away from the target of the skin, you're not likely to see any of the above. You're not likely to see any soot. You're not likely to see any stippling. As you start to get closer to the skin surface, the skin being the target, you're more likely to see it. So if you have something that's in a contact range, you're more likely to see that soot material deposited either on the skin or within the underlying tissues. And then the further that you get from that, increases or decreases the likelihood of seeing it on that target zone. So as you're closer to the area of the skin, say at least within 6 inches, you're more likely to see that kind of soot area, and you may or may not see that stippling. You're more likely to see it the closer that you are. And then as you start to pull away from that area and get past into those 24 inches or beyond, you're less likely to see it. Again, it all depends upon the gun and the ammunition that's being used.
Okay, so you typically don't see soot or stippling in cases where the muzzle and the target are 2 feet or greater away?
In general, yes.
Okay, and is there any, any indication once you get to that 24 inches, 36 and beyond, is there any way to determine distance once you get out of that 2-foot range?
No.
Okay, so if you're beyond that, it's not something that you can look at medically?
No, it's very unlikely that you will, again, depending upon the gun and the ammunition.
Okay, and so in the closer range, sometimes you'll see soot or stippling on an injury, and that will indicate a closer range?
Yes.
Now, are there things that block the soot or stippling from depositing on the body?
It depends. Somebody may have clothing. If somebody has more substantial hair, for example, those different things can kind of pick up that soot and or those gunpowder particles before it even gets onto the skin surface. So you can have areas where you don't see any if there was some clothing in that area. So you may see a demarcation line, for example, between where stippling is or isn't on the body based on what they might be wearing. Likewise, they could be in an environment where something is blocking them, like a car or a glass or something like that, where you end up going to have an intermediary target that is really going to be struck by the projectile and all of those gunpowder particles and stippling, such that it's not going to hit that individual even though it's fairly close.
Okay. Now, in preparation for your testimony this afternoon, did we ask you to review materials associated with autopsies of Sharon Randolph and Michael Miller?
Yes.
And did you do what you described earlier, pulling all the case files on both of those autopsies?
Yes.
And you reviewed the photographs, the reports, the toxicology, and anything associated with that?
Yes.
I'd like to talk to you first about the autopsy of Sharon Randolph. And may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to show you a series of, well, I'll ask you to look through a series of photographs. This is, so that's 250.
I think he's been in since 2017.
252, 253, 254.
He did 7 to 10 years previously
255, 256.
for a witness tampering charge in the first in the trial of his second wife.
One last one, which is not in order, and that's 190. Do you recognize all those photographs?
I didn't see the front of them. I saw mostly the back.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Just for the record, we don't have any objection to any of the autopsy photos.
Okay. That would be good.
And Your Honor, I just would want to advise these are somewhat graphic photos that we're going to see, both of these autopsy photos.
Okay. What are the numbers on those?
It is 250 through, what's that last one there? 259, and then the other one is 190, Your Honor.
There are clips that need a restoration. Here, let's all think really hard and see if we can restore the clips. Is it working? Think harder, everybody. We need to restore those clips mentally.
Are those some of the photographs taken at the autopsy of Sharon Randolph?
Yes.
And are they a fair and accurate representation of the injury that she suffered?
Yes.
I'm going to put on
There
the
we go.
overhead first what's been admitted as states 250. Are you able to see that on your
Repair
screen,
completed.
Doctor?
I am not.
Oh.
That looks like a bag tag. Might be a toe tag.
Yes.
Okay. Looking at 250, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please, what we're seeing in this photograph?
You're seeing in the background the black body bag in which the decedent is, and then you can see the zippers that are part of that body bag, and then through the eyelets is a little blue plastic seal that goes through those eyelets. Additionally, you can see what will become the toe tag that's there, kind of partially attached to that seal area. And then also you'll see a marker that's a gray card. On both the toe tag and the gray card is the Clark County Coroner case number that's associated with this particular case. And likewise the information. So this is when the body arrives into the forensic division, demonstrating that the evidence being the body is intact upon arrival.
Okay, and then so the Clark County case number is that gray card 083898?
Correct.
And I think there's, when we move on to other photographs, but there's a mouse there if you need to.
There are a couple very
more
brief
specific in
images that are
your
shown, if I
direction,
understand
in what
correctly,
you're
and they'll be
directing.
quickly
Okay,
taken
I'm
off
now
the screen.
putting on the overhead states
Just a heads up.
251.
There's one.
Let me back up just a little bit.
It's almost like I warned you
What
right
are we
before it
looking at in
happened.
that photograph?
This is one of the final photos that we take. It's after we've done all of our processing, and we consider this like an identification photo where we've cleaned up the decedent's face, washed them, and then put obviously our case number card next to their face. So we consider this to be like an identification photo.
Holly,
And
congratulations
so I'm
to your
putting
second
on the
youngest son.
overhead
Congratulations to you as well.
252.
Thank you very much. I hope the wedding was wonderful.
Can you see that, or do you want me to move it any particular way?
I can. So in this case, this is looking at the decedent's right ear and the right side of her head, and obviously there's some blood within the photo, so this is prior to her being cleaned up and prior to the area of injury being shaved. Within that area of her hair is, how do I get it to,
Click on those arrows right there.
okay, thank you so much. Is an area of injury within the right parietal scalp that is within the area of her hair.
So is it like in this area on her head, like above her?
Yes, so you can see where the top of her ear is here, and so just like on yourselves, it's up on the side of the head, adjacent to that area of the scalp, if you will, above the ear.
I'm next putting on the overhead states 253. Oh,
I did the trash, and then what's,
I think it's, can you click on that little house?
That's awesome, Holly.
Little house? Yeah.
oh yeah.
Got turned it off. Ms. Becker, can you press the blue button?
yes, ma'am.
Technology.
All right. So this is 253. What are we looking at in this photograph?
This is after we've started to clean off some of the blood from that area, and before we've kind of reapproximated the wound or even shaved the area. And the wound is fairly large in its perspective here.
So
And then I think you
she was shot
said that after,
on the
or
side of the head
typically what's
above the
done is
ear.
the area of the wound is shaved.
That's correct.
I'm next putting on the overhead states, oh, sorry, 254?
Can you press the blue button?
Yeah. Okay, this is 254.
So this is now that we've shaved the area to be able to reveal the details of the wound itself. And this is an entrance gunshot wound to the right parietal scalp area.
And how are you able to tell that this is a gunshot wound? Like, what characteristics are you looking at as a medical examiner?
It has some features where it will have an abrasion at one edge, and then when you have a muzzle or a gun that's put up to the surface of the skin. Those gases and things that we've kind of referred to already don't have much room to go, and so because of that, they can get underneath the scalp surface and then cause what is called radiating lacerations. And so you'll see some evidence of these lacerations extending out from the wound as well.
Now, are you able to tell if there's soot or stippling in this injury or on this photo?
One of the other photos, and I don't remember which exhibit it is, has a little bit of the fragment of the projectile on it. You can see it within the tissues that's kind of falling out of there.
Okay.
And then also you can see a lot of forensic pathologists will actually take sections of this to be able to look at under the microscope. And Dr. Benjamin did do that on this case and also identified that there was soot there as well. And you could see it in some of the other photographs too. I'm not sure we have those in this particular exhibit.
Tommy's not sleepy at all.
Let me move on.
I've never seen him more engaged as when
This
we were
is
looking at
states
autopsy photos.
255. Is that oriented right, or do you want it a different?
That'll work.
Okay. What are we looking at there?
So here now we've removed the scalp forward and back. So we cut behind the ears and then reflect the scalp forward and back, and then we're able to look at the skull surface. And then in here you can see this portions of the bone has internal beveling, and she has a slight what we call keyhole defect, where you partly see some external beveling associated with it too. So sometimes, depending upon the angle of the projectile as it enters into the skull, you can end up having part of the bone fracture outward and have that external beveling where I have that kind of circle red line or semicircle red line next to. And as well, you can have the internal beveling that you see, which is beveling of the bone inward. The inward occurs as the projectile is going in and kind of pushes inward, and then therefore has like more of a cone-shaped inside into the skull.
So if we were to find pieces of tissue from Sharon Randolph at a crime scene, that wouldn't surprise you given the nature of this injury?
Correct. And as you could see from one of the first exhibits we put up, the portion of the wound had brain matter coming out of it, and there's actually one of the pictures actually has a small little like metal fragment there that's part of the fragment of the projectile too.
Next, I'm putting on the overhead states 256. What are we looking at in that photograph?
We obviously do an examination of the entire body, and so we also do an external examination of the torso areas and then open up the body to examine all of the organs as well. And this is looking at a small contusion or bruise that's on the abdomen, and it's very faint. It's kind of a yellow-brown in color, so it's probably an older healing contusion.
And then this is, I'm going to put on states 257. That's obviously her arm.
Correct. This one doesn't project as well. It's actually a little bit easier to see in the actual photograph, but there is a contusion that's on her forearm as well. Again, a minor contusion.
And this is states 258.
Again, same thing here. This one doesn't project as well, but there is a minor contusion that's on her knee and non-fatal, just a simple bruise.
And you said a contusion was, it's a bruise?
A contusion is a bruise.
Okay, these are minor, normal bruises that maybe people would have just day-to-day life?
Yes.
And I think you said one of them appeared to be healing, so there's no indication that they're, like, they may not be contemporaneous with that. They could be from a day earlier or a couple days before?
Yes.
Okay. I want to put on the overhead next, states
I think they
190.
They can be called out of retirement. You can,
That,
I mean, retirement
I
is
would
just
call
when you
that an
choose to
X-ray.
stop
What
working.
do you call that?
Yes, we do X-rays, radiographs on nearly all of our decedents that come in, particularly those that may be involved in gunshot wound cases. And then this is a lateral X-ray, and it demonstrates the projectile fragments that are retrieved during the autopsy procedure within the radiograph itself. Additionally, you could see some metallic portions of personal effects in the radiograph too. I believe those are maybe some earrings that are there.
Okay.
And in addition, you can also see that there is at least one fracture demonstrated within this radiograph. There are others that were photographed in the autopsy process.
Now, those fragments, projectile fragments that you just talked about, those are typically recovered at autopsy?
Yes.
Okay. Next, I'm going to put on the overhead states 259. And what is that?
These are the projectile and the jacket fragments that were recovered during the autopsy procedure.
And obviously, this projectile broke apart.
Yes.
Now, in conjunction with the autopsy, is a toxicology done on individuals as they present at autopsy?
Yes.
And how is it a blood draw, or how is that done?
Generally, we do it when the body is opened and take blood from the vessels, the veins, particularly within the body cavity.
Okay, and what was her toxicology, if you recall?
It was negative for common drugs of abuse and negative for ethanol.
Okay, so essentially, what was her cause of death?
A gunshot wound of head.
And are you able to give us any sense of trajectory on her injury, or how the projectile moved through her body?
Yes, it moved from right to left and upward. There isn't too much deviation, front to back or back to front.
Okay, so sort of across her head.
Yes.
And the manner of her death?
A homicide.
Now, if you suffered this type of injury, what would be the effect on the individual immediately? I assume it would be immediately incapacitating. Is that fair?
The injury to the brain is significant, such that someone would be incapacitated nearly immediately. It may take a few seconds or so for the heart to realize that things aren't going well with the brain. But in terms of capabilities, the person would pretty much drop almost instantly.
Okay. And you mentioned that there's some evidence of soot, so there's some indication that it's at closer range?
That's correct.
Now, I'd like to move on to the autopsy of Michael Miller. I'm going to put on the overhead states 260. Dr. Gavin, is that same sort of identification photo for how his body presented at autopsy?
That's correct. This is, again, a picture of the body bag in the background, which is black. And then you can't quite see the eyelets as well, but it's the same process where the tag that is blue in this case goes through those eyelets on the body bag, demonstrating that it's sealed in place as it arrives into the forensic office. And then likewise, there is what would become the toe tag there, and both those are also represented in the gray placard is the case number.
Okay, and that's 083899?
Correct.
Okay. Next, I'm going to put 261. Is that same similar like identification photo that you spoke of earlier?
Yes, this is a photo that was taken towards the end of the autopsy process where he's been cleaned up, and then we just have the identification card for the case and then a picture of his face.
Now, Mr. Miller had several gunshot wound injuries. Is that fair?
That's correct.
And they're detailed and they're labeled gunshot wound 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Correct.
The numbering system, does that have any correlation to the actual sequence of how the wounds were inflicted?
No. In general, most forensic pathologists tend to go from the top to the bottom, and so they may number them that way. I don't know exactly if that was Dr. Benjamin's style, but that's definitely what I tried to do, is go from top to bottom.
Okay, so when we talk about gunshot wound injury number 1, we're just identifying a particular injury. We're not saying that's where he was shot first.
Correct.
Okay. Let's look at, this is states 262. What are we looking at there?
So this is after he's been cleaned up, and then you can see 2 gunshot wounds on his head. One of them is here, just in front of the left ear, and then another one is just to the lateral aspect, upper lateral aspect of the left eyebrow.
Okay. And the one closer to his ear has been identified within the reports and all those things as gunshot wound 1?
Correct.
Okay. I'll put on the overhead, states 263. Oh, can you?
Oh, yes.
Sorry. Okay. So is that a closer view of gunshot wound 1?
Yes.
And when you look at that, you're able to tell that that is an entrance?
Yes.
And what are you noting that makes it an entrance?
There is an abrasion collar at the edge of the wound. And abrasion is like a scrape. So as a projectile is entering into the skin surface, it's going to scrape along the skin surface and create an abrasion collar on that area of the skin where it enters. As a projectile exits the body, it's going to tear out of the body and generate what's commonly a laceration. So a tear in the skin as it's exiting. So you may see the abrasion as it's entering and then a laceration as it's exiting. Sometimes on the exit, you will also have an associated contusion in that area, because it's kind of slamming into that area, if you will, and then lacerating outward.
I'm going to put on the overhead, states 264. Is that a closer view of the entrance for gunshot wound 1?
Yes, and if you'll notice, we remove the placard when we do these close-up shots because the camera will tend to focus on the placard instead of focusing on the wound itself, but you always see that perspective shot beforehand, which we represented here. So you'll have a perspective shot with our placard with the case number, and then the close-up will be demonstrated shortly thereafter in sequence with the wound itself. And then here, this actually gives you a better representation of what I represented as the abrasion area in previous description.
Okay. Can you clear that? Yep, thank you. This is states 265. What are we looking at in that photograph?
We're looking at the top of his head, and to the left upper lateral aspect of the eyebrow is that second entrance gunshot wound. You can't see the one that's near the left ear that we're currently talking about. However, what you can see towards above the right eyebrow and towards the front is what will be the exit gunshot wound that's on the right frontal scalp area. And the quality of this, again, is that laceration quality that I described as part of an exit wound's features.
This is states 266. Should I put it that way, or?
I think that's better for orientation.
Okay.
For the jury.
And that is this is a closer view of that exit?
Yes. So the photographer originally took the picture from the other direction, but this is now just flipped around, and this is that same wound, and it's the exit gunshot wound. And
looking at this, how are you able to tell that it's an exit wound injury?
It has that laceration, and it's without that abrasion. And in addition, it doesn't project as well in this particular picture, but it does on the actual photograph there, where you have a little bit of contusion around it as well.
I'm going to put on the overhead 267. No, I guess it would be this way, right? Mm-hmm. That's a closer view?
Correct. And then, again, that's the laceration for the exit wound. Again, the placard has been removed for the close-up shot.
Okay, so this is all what we've been discussing is gunshot wound 1, the one that entered around, well, actually I should say left ear.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm going to put on the overhead states 268. And what is that?
During the course of the autopsy procedure, we'll sometimes use probes to demonstrate trajectory through the body. Again, the body in the anatomical position. We don't know where the head was moving or how it was moving in the dynamicness of the situation, but relative to the anatomical position of the body, this helps demonstrate the trajectory of this particular wound, which is going from left to right, and it's somewhat upward in terms of the trajectory on this one, but that's looking at the body anatomically as it lays there.
Okay, so looking at this exhibit, the entrance this is the entrance on the left, sort of near the left ear as we saw earlier?
That's correct.
And then it traveled, and then this is the exit that's sort of the right upper forehead?
Correct.
Okay, so I would assume then you would agree that this injury or this projectile traveled left to right?
That's correct.
Any deviation on front to back or?
It's in an upward trajectory as it's coming from this kind of right ear location and heading up towards the body. There is a minimal amount of deviation in the front to back direction, but it's small. It's predominantly left to right in an upward kind of angle.
Okay, and where did this travel in his head? Like what damage did it do?
So this enters in on the left side and ends up entering into the left parietal area and hits into portions of the left parietal bone and the left frontal bone, and then also, left frontal lobe and the right frontal lobe, and then exits out that right front area.
And would this wound be independently fatal?
Yes, that goes right through the brain matter.
Okay, and any, well, if someone suffered this type of injury, would it, cause them to drop to the ground, or what do you think would happen to them?
Some people can go longer seconds with these types of injuries because it's mostly across those frontal lobes, but they're going to be pretty well incapacitated, unlike the previous one that we discussed that kind of goes through the middle portion of the brain.
I'm going to put back on the overhead states 262, just for orientation purposes. I think earlier in your testimony you said there's another gunshot wound of entrance on this photograph?
Correct.
And can you just orient the jurors a little bit, please?
The second gunshot wound about which we're speaking is the one that's on the lateral aspect of the left eyebrow just above it.
Okay, and again, we're not suggesting sequence, we're just going in order that the wounds were labeled.
Correct.
Okay, so this is another entrance wound on the left-hand side, but higher up on his head.
Correct.
I'm putting on the overhead states 269. Is that a closer view of that entrance wound?
Yes. And this also has the abrasion collar that you can see at the edge of the wound as an entrance gunshot wound feature.
Okay. This one that was at the, I should do it on the left side, on the left forehead, where did it travel?
This wound actually ends up, or this gunshot path ends up going from that front area through a portion of the frontal bone, through the back portion of the left orbit, and then goes through the maxilla, ends up going through into the, so your maxilla is the upper part, your roof of your mouth, then goes through that and goes and lacerates the tongue, and then comes out through the anterior aspect of the muscle and soft tissues of the neck, and then exits there.
Okay, so it enters on the left side of his forehead, essentially?
Yes.
And then exits on sort of the right side at his neck?
Yes.
So a really steep angle?
Correct.
I'm putting on the overhead states.
That had to have been shot from inside the garage. Enter on the top left-hand side
What is
and
depicted in
exits
that
the bottom
photograph?
right.
You can see this is his chin is sort of in the, as you're looking at the photo, the upper right corner of this particular photograph. And then you can see sort of where the clavicles are coming together. You could see more of his right clavicle towards the right lower portion of this photo. So you're kind of in that anterior aspect of the neck and more towards the right side of the neck as well. And here you have an exit gunshot wound. Again, that's a laceration that's present. Can you shift the photograph up just a little
Sure.
bit, please?
Oh, I don't.
Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies.
That's okay. Sorry about that. Is that better?
Yes, please. So here is the exit wound that's towards the right anterior aspect of his neck. And then you can look down just below his clavicle here, and there is a contusion, a bruise in that area. In my opinion, that the projectile came downward and then exited and then hit right into that area on the chest.
Okay. And then that was the one that, this is 2 that starts on the left forehead and comes out his neck, and then you're saying it probably hit his chest?
Yes.
You mentioned that it kind of goes, you said maxilla, I would assume that means his mouth? Or?
Yes, the roof of the mouth.
And it lacerates the tongue?
Correct.
So it's kind of like really in the front part of his face or head?
Yes, towards the front portion of his head.
Okay. Would this injury be immediately incapacitating?
It's unlikely that this injury alone would be immediately incapacitating, other than the blood that would be present in the mouth, and then he may have some concussive injury from the impact to the head portion.
Okay. So let's talk about gunshot wound 3. I'm going to put on the overhead states 273. Does that depict it? Is that yes?
That's good, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. My apologies, yes.
Can you kind of orient the jury on, I assume his head would be at the top of the image?
Correct. At the top of the image would be his head. You can actually see the nipples for an orientation, and towards the lower portion of the photograph, you could see his umbilicus, his belly button, to help you orient where you are on the torso, the portion of the torso. So towards the left upper quadrant of the abdomen is an entrance gunshot wound, which is located here.
Okay. And where does that one travel?
That one travels somewhat superficially through the body, and that it goes into the cavity and then goes along the surface underneath the sternum and goes across the pericardial sac and across the heart, and then ends up exiting above that. It didn't curve. I'm sorry, I moved the wands that way.
I'll put on the overhead states 272. Oops.
Oh, my apologies.
I think I did it too fast. Sorry. Does that show the exit of gunshot wound 3?
Yes.
And can you point that out to the members of the jury?
In this case, you'll have the right nipple for orientation, similar to what you saw in the previous photograph, and then just a little bit to the center of the chest is where the exit gunshot wound is. Above that, to the right, near where that collarbone is, was that other contusion that I showed you from that previous wound path that we had seen. But the exit for this one that starts in the left upper quadrant of the abdomen, and I said goes underneath the sternum, goes across the heart, will exit in this area towards the center chest.
So this particular injury, 3, started in his left abdomen lower part?
Yes.
And then went up, right?
Correct. So this goes from left to right and mostly upward without much deviation front or back.
Okay. And would this injury, I think you described it causing damage to his heart?
Yes.
Would this injury be independently fatal?
Yes, this injury can be fatal, although I've seen people where they've been shot in their heart and they are able to move afterwards for some period of time and then will collapse.
Was there any soot or stippling or anything like that associated with this injury?
None identified in the photographs or documented in the report.
Okay. I think we'll move to gunshot wound 4, and I'm going to put on the overhead states 277. Do you want me to, is it that way?
Either is fine.
Okay. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is the left side of his body. You can see on the right aspect of this photograph where you have his axilla, his left armpit area, and then on the left lateral aspect of his chest, there's an entrance gunshot wound, and you can see that here.
Okay. Now, on this particular injury, is there an associated exit wound?
No.
Where does this projectile travel in his body?
This projectile goes from left to right across his body, and it's kind of minimal deviation. It goes through his stomach and also goes through a portion of his liver, and then kind of goes into his what we call the retroperitoneum, which is the back portion, soft tissues within the body, so inside the body cavity, and then comes to rest sort of in the back muscles. So there's a little bit of that kind of front to back, but it's minimal within that body space area.
What about any deviation of upward or downward in relation to anatomical position?
Anatomically, this was a little downward.
Okay, so sort of starting on the left armpit area and then maybe slightly downward?
Correct.
And then that projectile would have been recovered at autopsy?
Correct.
I'm putting on the overhead states 279. What is that?
This is the projectile recovered from that wound path.
Okay, so we're on the fourth gunshot wound. All of them have had exits except for this one. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and this was the projectile recovered from the one that starts in sort of like underneath his armpit?
Yes, on the left lateral aspect of his chest.
Okay. And this one, you said it lacerated the liver and stomach?
Correct.
And so would it be independently fatal?
It will be. They may live a little bit longer with this particular wound in isolation.
Lastly, I'm going to talk about gunshot wound 5. This is states 280.
So we got shot a total of 5 times. How many rounds were
We can see
fired?
4 still in this image. Is that correct?
Yes.
7.
And then there's another gunshot wound depicted as well?
Yes.
And can you point that out to the members of the jury, please?
There is a gunshot wound near the left elbow. That's an entrance gunshot wound. And you can see this is somewhat near to where that gunshot wound was of the left lateral aspect of the chest, which is down here.
And this one, so this one sort of enters at the back of his arm near the elbow, is that fair?
Yes, and remember when we mentioned the anatomical position is like the person standing with their feet flat and their arms at the side of their bodies with their palms facing forward. So in that case, that this elbow would be considered in the back of the body, so it would be backwards area as in terms of anatomical description.
And was there an exit wound associated with this injury?
Yes.
I'm going to put on the overhead states 282. Can you point out the exit wound?
Yes, so now this is his forearm kind of flipped forward, more towards the anatomical position about which we've been speaking. And then on that left forearm area is a laceration exit gunshot wound. This actually does have a little bit of abrasion associated with it, and some people would describe this as a shored exit wound. As a shored exit wound means that it has qualities of laceration as well as abrasion. The reason you see that combination is if that exit wound area is pressed up against a surface. So as the bullet projectile is trying to get out of the body, is going to tear out of the body, but it's also going to have the skin surface get scraped against whatever area that is. So it may be that this area of the body was up against the torso surface. So it may be that the arm was against the torso, and that's why you see this different kind of quality to this particular exit wound.
Now, would this injury have caused like a fracture to the bones in his arm?
Yes, you can see the forearm looks a little odd in terms of the way that it's laying there. So there's a fracture at the distal portion of the left humerus, which is your upper arm bone, and also a fracture to the proximal ulna, which is one of the bones that's in your forearm.
And again, no soot or stippling associated with it?
Correct, none.
And given the nature of this injury, I wouldn't think it would be fatal, but what is your assessment?
This injury on its own is less likely to be fatal because you have mostly fractured bones. However, you can have other things that can result from wounds, like infections and things like that too.
Now, in terms of all of the gunshot wounds, were all of the entrances on the left side of the body?
Yes.
And there was only one with a projectile inside the body remaining?
Correct.
And that was gunshot wound 3?
Correct.
May I approach her?
No, I believe that was gunshot wound 4 because.
Sorry.
My apologies. Number 3 is the one that's in the left upper quadrant and then goes upwards and then exits out the center of the chest. And number 4 is that left lateral one. So it's number 4.
Okay. And I misspoke. I apologize. Thanks for correcting me. Dr. Gavin, I'm showing you what's been marked as state's proposed 289. Do you recognize this image?
Yes.
Is that an image that Mr. Hamner and I showed you a couple of weeks before trial?
Yes.
And when we met with you, did we ask you if those arrows accurately depicted the directionality of the gunshot wound injuries on Mr. Miller?
Yes.
And did we ask you if they accurately portrayed the location of the injuries?
Yes.
And in fact, did you have us make a correction on one version of this because it wasn't accurate enough in your opinion?
Yes.
Now, as it presents in the courtroom today, is it an accurate depiction of the injuries, trajectory, directionality, and location from what you reviewed of the autopsy of Mr. Miller?
The only thing I might change is where that contusion and exit is on the upper right anterior aspect of the chest.
Okay.
This wound that's in the left upper quadrant comes more medial to where that contusion is on the anterior aspect of the chest.
Okay. Can you do that with alter it with my pen, or to kind of write the directionality that you'd change? Okay. Other than, or with that alteration, is it a fair and accurate depiction of the location of his injuries, the trajectory, and how he presented at autopsy?
Yes.
State moves to admit 289.
Judge just called a break. Said counsel approach. Let's see if Tommy chooses to do yoga now or if we're going to do sleepy time. Oh, the autopsy pictures are still up. Tough choice. Sleep or look at the pictures. Heather, welcome to the gallery. Love that yellow courthouse by your name. Thank you. Thank you so much for your continued support. Oh, he sees the cameras on him. Let's see if he decides to get sleepy here. Eyelids are heavy. There they go. Closing. Dipping down just a little bit. Here goes the chin. Nope. And we're back. That was it. It was brief, but we managed to get a quick nap time in there. I don't know. I wish we had seen. I don't want to see the autopsy pictures. I mean, we've seen a lot of them already in this, but if we could see on a diagram or even a model with the trajectory rods for each of the shots, I think that would be very telling, because I think that they would very clearly not match up with any version of Mr. Randolph's recounting of the story. We have entrances at weird angles that just doesn't make sense unless his head was down, which he never described it was, and it's strange. It's really strange. Tommy's doing another sleepy time. We get two little naps in one break. That's pretty good. Welcome, Cooper's mom. Good to have you here. Welcome, even though you're late. Better here than not here. He's on meds that makes him sleepy. That's what he says, but he's very entertained during the autopsy pictures. I've never seen him quite so alert, and I mean, his eyes are bright, and he's quickly, glancing around. It's only during the break time with the static going that he gets sleepy. Yeah, today, I think the worst of the photos you've seen are all they show today. Oh, he's almost out. Headphones might fall off the head here. This might be the big one, guys. No. Can we get a yawn or something? Sirius XM is calling. Hello?
Hi, this is Victoria. I'm calling from Sirius XM. Call may be recorded for quality purposes. But
I'm also recording because I'm live on YouTube. Is that all right?
No problem, ma'am. Speak with Jennifer McIntyre, please.
I think you've got the wrong number.
Are you?
There are
11 GMC.
5 arrows.
Ma'am, I'm broadcasting live on YouTube right now. Can we call another time?
Can you, with my pen, indicate which one is gunshot wound 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Yes.
I'm done.
With the Roman numerals?
All right. I wasn't going to give her a hard time. He never gets to the point where he smashes his face on the desk. We're still holding out hope, Lisa, that it could happen.
If I'm reading your markings correct, and again, this
Correctly.
is in sequence. The first gunshot wound enters around his left ear and goes out the right forehead.
Yes.
The second one you describe enters the left forehead and goes out his neck.
Correct.
Tending to the right side.
Correct.
So those are sort of opposite exit points.
The hand motions are great.
Yes.
Like one's up and one's down.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
And then
this is
gunshot wound 3 starts on the left abdomen and comes out the right side of his chest.
More towards the center of the chest.
More towards the center. And then gunshot wound 4 starts on the left, kind of underneath his armpit.
Yes.
And that's the one that doesn't exit.
Correct.
And then gunshot wound 5 is the one that enters at the back, or what I would call the back of his left elbow.
Yes.
Okay. So they're going in varying directions.
Yes.
That's the point.
The state would move to admit 289. Okay. Now, in association with the autopsy of Mr. Miller, was toxicology done on him as well?
Yes.
And what were the findings?
He had benzylecgonine in his system, which is a cocaine metabolite.
And from the toxicology reading, are you able, as a forensic pathologist, to give us some time frame of when that cocaine might have been ingested?
No, I don't know when he ingested that.
Okay. Does the finding indicate that it's active, or?
That's an inactive metabolite of cocaine.
And so Does that mean, I would assume that it, like, he didn't just ingest it prior to death? Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Is there any kind of time frame on that metabolite? I mean, could it be like he ingested an hour before, or is that something you can't estimate from the toxicology?
In general, it can be hours for them to metabolize it by certain half-lives, but I don't know what his rate of metabolism would be, and I don't know what his usage would be.
Okay, but it's only the metabolite that's present in the blood?
Correct.
Okay, so when you say you ingested cocaine and then immediately were shot, would you see the metabolite, or would you see like active cocaine?
People after they've died do not continue to metabolize drugs, so you're looking at more of a representation of what he has in his system at the time or close to the time of his death.
And so his is, though, the metabolite?
Yes.
Do you have, did you reach a conclusion regarding the cause of death of Mr. Miller?
Yes.
And what is that?
Multiple gunshot wounds.
And did you reach a conclusion regarding the manner of death?
Yes.
And what is that?
Homicide.
Thank you. I will pass the witness, Your Honor.
Cross.
See how this goes.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon.
You didn't perform any of the functions of the autopsy for either Sharon Randolph or Mike Miller, right?
That's correct.
In fact, you had access under those file numbers that we saw in the photographs, unique to that individual autopsy, so you can go back and read the report that was prepared at the time of autopsy, yes?
Yes.
And you did that in this case?
Yes.
And those autopsies were performed by Dr. Benjamins?
Correct.
Okay. Corresponding with those reports are also the photographs that you mentioned?
Correct.
And you feel that you had an opportunity to review sufficiently the notes that were taken, the autopsy report, the file in its totality, including photographs, that you can render the opinions you just did?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to talk to you about a couple things you said on direct examination. You said one of the things that happens in a case of a suspicious death is the way the body bag is sealed up. Remember that?
Yes.
When you say suspicious death, almost every gunshot wound is going to qualify, right?
Correct.
As opposed to natural causes, I'm 100 years old and I die in my sleep.
Correct.
So anytime someone is shot and killed in a violent act, that bag would be sealed up.
Yes.
And the reason you do that is because it's imperative that you review the body in as best possible in the shape it is at the time it's located.
Correct.
For forensic reasons, right?
Correct.
For medical reasons, right?
Yes.
To be accurate, correct?
Yes.
For instance, if a body was discovered where someone had been shot and you didn't preserve it, you threw it in the back of a pickup truck and drove around town with it all day, carried it into the coroner's office, autopsy might not be as accurate.
There could possibly be that, yes.
Okay, you don't want to
She's like, "We don't do
contaminate
that."
the work that you're going to do. Agree?
Correct.
Okay. You mentioned a couple terms on direct examination, and I just want to make sure that it's clear for the jury. When you talk about the body itself and the injuries that that body sustained, you do it in the traditional anatomic position, right?
That's correct.
You would agree with me that we as human beings, you as you came in here to testify, and me as I'm asking you questions, and the jurors as they're seated in the box, almost are never in an actual anatomic position.
Yes.
It is feet flat on the ground, right?
Correct.
And the palms at the side extended forward.
Correct.
I mean, I'd look pretty weird if I was standing like that on the street, right?
Yeah, and also your face forward too.
Right,
so.
I have to be completely straight, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You indicated that you do that so that you can accurately identify both exteriorly and interiorly the wounds, the defects, the medical incidents that cause a death that you're investigating, right?
It helps us with where anatomical locations are, and then to be able to have a consistent way and to describe those to others. And that's the majority of the reasoning. Also, it helps when you're describing things like trajectories that we've been describing too.
Right. In the anatomical position, for instance, as it relates to wound number 3 on Mr. Miller, you can say left upper quadrant of abdomen, and any pathologist reading that's going to know where it's at.
Right.
Okay. You also used a term a couple times in direct examination. You said a dynamic situation. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
If you have people moving around or any type of altercation that's going on, people are going to be moving. And just as counselor said, that the body isn't going to stay in that exact position during that interaction between those individuals.
And you would agree with me as a pathologist, it's almost impossible to tell in what position a body was at the time it was shot.
Almost, but there are conditions that you can infer what's going on based on what you have for injury.
Right. You agree it's almost impossible to tell the position a body is in at the time it's struck by a gunshot.
Yes, almost.
And you certainly aren't trying to indicate to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how either Sharon Randolph or Mike Miller were standing or positioned at the time of any one of these gunshot wounds, right?
That's correct.
Okay. You also indicated that you can't provide any ordering of shots. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yes.
When you have a situation, as you did with Mr. Miller's autopsy, the fact that he had 5 separate gunshot wounds, presumably at or near the time of one another, you can't tell us if any one of those came before or after any of the others.
Correct.
In Ms. Randolph's case, it's a little bit different because you have 1 gunshot wound.
Correct.
All right. I want to talk to you real quickly about the autopsy of Ms. Randolph, okay? Single gunshot wound, essentially above and slightly behind her ear. Is that right?
Yes.
Would you describe that as a contact wound?
Yes.
What do you mean by a contact wound?
For her, she has both the radiating lacerations and she has some soot within that wound as well. So the muzzle is either adjacent to or on the skin surface itself.
Okay, so at the time Mike Miller puts the gun to Sharon Randolph's head and pulls the trigger, it's touching her head.
Yes.
That wound almost always would be immediately incapacitating.
Yes.
Meaning she would drop instantly, right?
Yes.
Not be able to stand. Right?
Yes.
Wouldn't be able to crawl, yell, respond, things like that.
Correct.
And that wound would almost always be fatal.
Yes.
With very rare exception, the type of injury she sustained, she cannot survive from.
Right.
In the external examination of a body at autopsy, when you're going head to toe and looking around the exterior, you identify characteristics that are unique to that person, right?
In general, yes.
If they have obvious scars, for instance, you would notate that.
Yes.
And you would notate things like tattoos, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, in this case, in reviewing the file and the photographs, you were able to notate a number of tattoos on Ms. Randolph's body. Is that right?
I don't recall where hers are specifically.
Is it in your report?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of it with you?
Yes.
We're referring to that report, refresh your recollection about the location and substance of her tattoos.
More likely than not, yes.
Okay. If you could take a minute and do that, just so it's clear.
Yeah, they're going to go into the tattoos. And because this is with the ME, it's going to be detailed about the tattoos. Sherry, the state's actually saying that Mike's the one that killed Sharon. That's the state's allegation as well.
As I look at it's page 3 of the report authored by Dr. Benjamin, there's an area called identifying marks.
Correct.
And you've had an opportunity to review that?
Yes.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what tattoo she had?
Objection, relevance?
They're going to approach. So here, we're going to have the defense. I think they're going to win this objection, first of all, because this has been brought up many times already. So this is fair game. But I think they're going to, let's see if sleepy time while we talk. I think they're going to go into these because it seems to paint the relationship as one that was loving, especially when they start describing a tattoo that Sharon had that's in an intimate area that was a heart with TR inside it. So presumably for Terry Randolph, we can guess what TR stood for. I'd love to have wrong answers only for that. But that's where they're going to get to. They're going to say, "Oh, she tattooed the names of the people she loved, her children, Terry. That's why she had these tattoos, to show that they were he loved her, and this was just this horrible killings. Mike came in and shot her just in cold blood, and he was defending it. So that's trying to paint him as the good guy and show this relationship as something that was better than maybe it was. But I think state's going to lose this objection, and defense will get to talk about it. TR stood for the terrible rash that Tommy gave her. Objections overruled.
She has what's described as a sunburst tattoo that is located on the lateral left upper arm, and below that is inscribed Colleen, and also inscribed next to it, or above it, is Nicholas. She has a design tattoo on her right forearm that's near the wrist. She has a heart tattoo on her right labia majora. She has a tattoo within that's labeled TR, for initials TR. And then on her right leg, she also has a central red heart, a centered red heart, and then there is a black design within that heart. And then on the lateral left leg, she also has a black scorpion tattoo with a red stinger.
Okay.
So far, yes. I know there's a state of emergency in
significance of those
Las Vegas,
may
but
not
they have
mean
not
anything to
canceled
you,
yet.
but certainly significant at the time of autopsy to notate those identifying characteristics.
Yes.
Okay. And that's done in every autopsy.
Some doctors do, and some doctors just say refer to the photographs.
Okay. Dr. Benjamin always does, right?
I don't know if she always does, but she did there.
Okay. Sharon had nothing in her system in the way of illicit substances. She wasn't drugged. She wasn't under the influence of alcohol at the time of her death. She had a clean tox, right?
Correct.
Okay. I want to talk to you then about Mr. Miller's autopsy. The state asked you a bunch of questions about the directionality of the separate listed gunshot wounds that were sustained by Mr. Miller.
Yes.
You would agree with me, as you said before, that you can't tell us whether one came before another, right?
Correct.
And you can't tell us without knowing a lot more information about how those wounds were inflicted, right?
How? What do you mean by how?
For instance, the state asked you, there was an entrance wound. It's referred to as gunshot wound number 2 in the report on the left side of the forehead. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And that had an exit wound at the right anterior neck, correct?
Yes.
Anterior meaning front?
Yes.
The question was asked by Ms. Weckerly, that's a very steep angle, right?
Yes.
Without knowing where and in what position the gun was fired, and in where and what position Mr. Miller was, you can't tell us how that gunshot wound happened, right?
In terms of the steep angle per se?
Right.
Correct. I was interpreting steep angle based on the anatomical position of the body.
Right. And I'm just going to give you a couple maybe silly examples. If I'm standing here and someone's standing directly above me on the second floor and there's an opening, they could shoot directly down on top of my head and make that wound, right?
Yes.
Likewise, if you were shooting me and I was bent over at the waist, that could cause the same wound, right?
Yes.
Also, the position of the person pulling the trigger would be relevant too, right?
Correct.
You'd have to know that information in order to say how those wounds were inflicted.
Correct.
And there's nothing about your review of Dr. Benjamin's autopsy, the photograph, or the report, which would give you the ability to do that, right?
The ability to know where each individual is positioned
Right.
during the interaction. No, that's correct.
And it would be pure speculation for you to try to do that.
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the terms perforating and penetrating
Yes.
gunshot wounds? Can you describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what those terms mean?
Penetrating gunshot wound is a gunshot wound that's entered into the body, and generally you're recovering something in there that's penetrated into the body, versus a perforating gunshot wound that's gone through and through the body.
Okay, so when we talk about the separate gunshot wounds as they relate to Mr. Miller, you've got 4 separate perforating wounds, right?
Correct.
Wounds with an entrance and an exit, correct?
Correct.
And you've got a singular penetrating wound, right?
Correct.
That's a wound with an entrance and no exit.
Correct.
As it relates to Miss Randolph, what type of wound did she have?
She essentially has a penetrating gunshot wound.
Meaning that there's an entrance wound, right?
Correct.
And in fact, there was the projectile and then a fragment from that projectile recovered at the time of autopsy.
Yes.
The state elicited at the end of direct examination the results of the toxicology test of Mr. Miller. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You would agree with me that if someone ingests cocaine, over time it breaks down into a metabolite, right?
Correct.
How quickly that breakdown happens is dependent on a number of factors within that person and the thing that they're ingesting, right?
Yes.
You can't tell us as a result of that toxicology report whether Mr. Miller had ingested a whole lot of cocaine that morning, right?
Correct.
Or a little bit not too long before the incident. Right?
Correct.
What you can tell us as a result of the toxicology that's done is that he had ingested cocaine, right?
Correct.
And it was in his system in some form at the time of his death.
Correct.
You also don't have any information about how the ingestion of cocaine would affect him, right?
True.
Would affect his decision making, correct?
Correct.
His motor skills.
Correct.
The way he would behave under its influence.
We do have some references to these things in terms of what these drugs do to people, but I don't know how he's behaving relative to that.
Precisely my point. You can tell us, as you said before, he had ingested it, it's breaking down in the system, but you don't know at the time of his death what the influence on him may be.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
At the time of autopsy, are individuals weighed and measured?
Yes.
And were both of these individuals weighed and measured?
Yes.
Could you tell us the height and weight of both Miss Randolph and Mr. Miller?
Ms. Randolph is about 194 pounds and about 70 inches in length. And then Mr. Miller is about 134 pounds and roughly about 70 inches in length.
It's about the same height.
Courts and buildings. In terms of feet and inches, how tall is 70 inches?
It's not quite 6 feet, but we also measure the length of the body. And so when the body's laying flat, it won't exactly be what might be on your driver's license per se, because you're more relaxed in those positions. So it tends to be a little bit longer than what would be, say, on your driver's license.
Okay.
So Mr. Tomchak asked you about the cocaine metabolite in Mr. Miller's toxicology report. Was there any active cocaine in his tox?
No.
So it was all metabolite?
Yeah, it was the benzylecgonine.
Okay. Why at autopsy is trajectory noted or memorialized?
It's to help with where, if you're able to kind of reconstruct the scene, where the individuals might be relative to the gun and the target being the individual that's struck. So it's one of the ways in which you can talk about the body, again, in the anatomical position, and see relative to perhaps even scene reconstruction where those weapons might be within that environment. It's to assist in some of that aspect, but it's also to try to look at the areas of injury within the body itself.
Okay. And so for a forensic pathologist, sort of your lane in this investigation is this is how trajectory presented at autopsy given the anatomical position.
That's correct.
And how that may or may not fit in with the crime scene is sort of left to someone else. You are just looking at it anatomical position at autopsy.
That's correct.
But it is information and data that's collected because it could be relevant in a particular case.
Correct.
Now, Mr. Tomchek spent some time talking about tattoos on Mrs. Randolph, and I think you said that some doctors don't even note what the tattoos are. They just say, like, see the photographs, correct?
Correct.
Tattoos could be relevant in identifying an individual that maybe had no, like, personal identification on them. Like, say you came upon someone, who didn't have any personal effects or any means of identification.
Yes, many people now are identified either through someone visualizing that body and saying that is so-and-so, whoever that individual is. Then you can also look at fingerprint identification. You can also look at radiograph comparison. You can look at dental comparison if you have a dentist that they had in life to demonstrate similarities in that. And then, of course, you can get into DNA. So we have a lot of kind of modern ways in which to do that. Tattoos, in terms of representation, they're identifiers for individuals, but they may not be the sole reason in which we identify that particular decedent. We tend to go for more of the scientific ways of doing it, particularly because people may have the same tattoo or a similar tattoo or something like that. Tattoos can be very useful when you end up with body parts or situations where you have body parts and those parts have a tattoo. So that may help you in terms of trying to figure out who that body part may belong to, and they can become very useful for that. So they're not always something that is used definitively as a scientific way in which to identify an individual.
And in this case, with regard to Mrs. Randolph's tattoos, do they have any medical significance?
In my opinion, they're just markings for that individual, not relevant to her identification in this case.
Okay, and they certainly don't relate to her cause of death?
Correct.
Don't relate to her manner of death?
Correct.
And would they be reflective of her state of mind, or could you even make that type of conclusion?
That would be speculative.
Okay. We don't know when she got the tattoos?
I don't know.
There's no way of medically determining that as she presented at autopsy?
Correct.
Lastly, the bullet that was recovered at autopsy with Mrs. Randolph, that wasn't an intact bullet, right? It was fragmented?
That's correct. It was fragmented itself and also fragmented from the jacket.
Okay. Thank you, and we will keep Dr. Gavin subject to recall, Your Honor, from the state's perspective.
It was subject to recall.
Just real quick, the state asked you some questions about trajectory and why that may be important in an investigation. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
It may be that the trajectory could be relevant to some other part of an investigation that has nothing to do with the autopsy, right?
That's correct.
Your job at autopsy is to document as completely as possible all of the information available, right?
Yes.
And for instance, a gunshot wound like number 5, the one to Mr. Miller's elbow, you can tell us there's a wound to the elbow and this is the direction it traveled, right?
Anatomically, the direction it traveled.
Right. You can't tell us from an injury like that whether the person was shot from in front or behind, however, right?
Yes, because you don't know where that arm is relative to the time and the space in their environment.
Because the arm of a person can move a lot in a dynamic situation.
Yes.
And in a case where there's a number of wounds, like Mr. Miller sustained, that aren't immediately incapacitating, that arm could move all over the place, right?
It's possible that it's mobile, if you will.
So he could have been shot in that elbow from behind, right?
Possible.
He could have been shot with his elbow in front, right?
Possible.
He could have been shot turned to the right in that elbow, right?
Correct. In my opinion, it's probably closer to the body based on the exit wound.
Right, and he could have been turned to the left with his arm close to the body as well, right?
Yes.
You can't tell us anything about that other than what you previously testified to.
Correct.
Okay. Likewise, tattoos could be relevant to some other part of an investigation that you just don't know about, right?
Possibly.
You wouldn't know that, right?
The tattoo is the focus of his recross here.
Right. As a medical examiner, a forensic pathologist, someone conducting an autopsy, you would document the medically important things, right?
Correct.
And there may very well be something on that body that's relevant somewhere else that you just don't know.
It depends on what you're talking about, the medical legal death investigation portion of it. So it's just beyond some of that medical only, and there's that medical legal, and you need that investigation piece to be able to put those pieces together.
Precisely my point. You would agree with that, right?
Yes.
Nothing else.
No follow-up.
See if the jury has any questions.
Yep.
Yep. We have some questions. Let's see how this goes. Okay, Tommy has a choice to make here. And he chose sleep. All right. I think the defense is saying that the tattoos are important because Sharon's not here to testify. And in a way, they're trying to say this is Sharon testifying that she loved Tommy, because why else would she have this tattoo of TR and a heart in a very private place? She can't talk. And so they want to use this and play this card saying this is what that means, but she's not here to say that's what it is.
Both Mike and Sharon's date of death was 5/9 of 2008, and time of death was 2:05. Is that when the coroner received them, or their actual time of death?
When our investigators go to the scene, they are able to pronounce death. And so when they view the bodies, they will pronounce death, and that tends to be the date and time that they put into that area. So they are allowed to pronounce death, and say like a clinician at the hospital will be able to pronounce death. So even though other medical personnel may be there, it's just the coroner investigator that's allowed to pronounce.
Was there any soot found on the number 1 and number 2 entrance wounds?
I assume from the male for that one. Assuming it's from the male, since he has more than one shot, there is none.
Okay. State any follow-up based on your question.
Yes, if the coroner investigator finds a decomposed body, the date and time of death will be the time they found it, right?
That's correct.
So it doesn't actually relate like this is the exact time of death. It's just when the investigator pronounces death.
That's correct. So it could be a skeleton in the desert, and they'll pronounce at the time that they identify the body.
Thank you.
Any follow-up?
Yeah, just as it relates to that issue, when someone is found following, for instance, a 911 call in a shooting, the coroner investigator responds to that location, right?
Correct.
And at that location, there are law enforcement personnel there, right?
Correct.
The coroner investigator physically goes into the scene to pronounce death, right?
Right, when it's cleared.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When it's cleared, she got that jab
Do
in.
the ladies and gentlemen of the jury have any further questions for this witness? Okay, seeing no response, Dr. Yabby, you are excused. Thank you very much for your testimony here today.
She's excused, subject to recall from the state, they said. By the way, Selena K., thank you so much, gifting 5 memberships.
Gentlemen of the jury, we are going to take our afternoon recess. During this recess, you must not discuss or communicate with anyone, including fellow jurors, in any way regarding this case or its
We're going to fast forward through this break. So if you need to run now.
You must not do any research such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, using reference materials. You must not make any investigation, testify in the case, recreate an aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own, and you must not formally express any opinion regarding this case until it's finally submitted to you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 2:35. We will be in recess until 2:50.
So they're taking a 20-minute break. While they do that, we're going to fast forward just a little bit to get caught up. wins this trial over. It was slated for 3 weeks. We've gone through, what, 2 of them now, right? So this is the last week. We expect it to wrap up here, and we're making pretty good time, honestly. Let's see. Let's fast forward. Wait for it. Boom. All right, here we go. That was 15 minutes. That was a 20-minute break. The court's going to be live this afternoon. We'll be live with them when they start.
Please be seated. The jury's all present in the court.
We are back on the record with C-250966, State of Alabama versus Thomas Randolph. Where the record plaintiff, Mr. Randolph, is present with his attorney, deputy district attorney on behalf of the state.
That's her actual speech.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
State, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Randy McPhail.
Randy McPhail. It's got the tie tack. Means business.
Yes.
Thank you. Please be seated. Will you please state and spell your first and last name?
Yes. First name is Randall. It's Randall. Last name is McPhail. McPhail.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, how were you employed back in 2008?
I was a senior crime scene analyst with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
And have you since retired?
Yes.
And what year did you retire?
2018.
What was the process for you in becoming a crime scene analyst? Did you start off in a certain position and then move up?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to have the qualifications to even test for the crime scene analyst. I had over 30 years experience in photography. I also completed university courses in mathematics and chemistry and some business-related courses as well. Once I tested and was hired, I went through the Crime Scene Analyst Academy as a Crime Scene Analyst 1, and also the Field Training and Evaluation Program for Crime Scene Analysts. The CSA 1 job is an entry-level position where you really gain the foundation for your future work as a crime scene analyst, hopefully a senior crime scene analyst. After spending 2 years as a crime scene analyst 1, you're able to test for crime scene analyst 2. And that's a more responsible position, one that handles more person calls versus the property calls that you probably came from as a CSA 1. It's also a preparatory position for the CSA 3. The CSA 3, or the Senior Crime Scene Analyst, that is another testing process. It takes you 4 years to get to that point where you can test for that position. And it's a rigorous testing process. And when you're done with that, you're pretty much handling person calls as well as some property calls, but mostly person calls. And that means you might be working on homicides, you might be working on sexual assaults, complex scenes. But it takes you 4 years to get to that position and quite a bit of testing.
And so when you work for Metro as a crime scene analyst, your proficiency tested within the organization?
Yes.
And you're evaluated and you either promote or you don't promote, is that
Correct.
fair? And you have training in all aspects of crime scene documentation and preservation?
Yes.
And that would be photography and then doing measurements, making diagrams, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Do you also, you personally have, or at least in 2008, did you have a special,
Sorry, Darcy.
I guess,
Feeling better.
qualification in the area of blood stain pattern analysis?
Yes, I completed probably about 125 hours worth of training for blood stain pattern analysis. I also completed approximately 129 hours for shooting incident reconstruction, and did quite a bit of work in those two fields during my career.
Now, for those designations, were those separate and apart from Metro? Like, is there like an independent body of Metro that says you're qualified in the area of bloodstain pattern analysis and interpretation?
There is. I did do a lot of work with Metro. We had classes that we try to get everybody on board with bloodstain pattern analysis, so we had classes for that. If you certify in bloodstain pattern analysis, you do so through the International Association for Identification. You also, I certified as in crime scene reconstruction, which dealt with bloodstain pattern analysis as well as shooting incident reconstruction. Cold case homicides were part of that class as well. So yeah, there is further education, and the certification goes through the International Association for Identification.
And over the course of your career until your retirement, how many crime scenes do you think that you've been to?
Sorry to say, I really didn't keep track of it. I'm sure I believe it's around the 6,000 mark when I left the department. Probably ranging in complexity from simple burglaries all the way up to more complex person calls like sexual assaults and homicides.
Okay. And back on May the 15th of 2008, were you requested to go to an address on Rancho Santa Fe Drive by homicide detectives?
Yes.
And do you recall which detective it was that requested that you come out?
I believe it was Dino Kelly who asked me to come out.
And so do you recall what the purpose was for you in going out there?
Yes.
What was that?
I had two purposes. The first was when homicide detectives returned to the scene to do a reenactment, they actually found two additional 9mm cartridge cases in the garage that were not found on the night of the 8th when the scene actually happened. So I was called to collect those, document their positions, and collect those as well. I was also called to document some oily deposits on the walls inside the hallway.
And why were you called to document those deposits on the hallway?
They would have been associated with the shooting. There was blood, hair, tissue, all in the hallway at high levels. It went up from 5 feet 8 above the floor all the way up to the ceiling, in some places at 12 feet high. And they wanted me to document those so they could be analyzed in the future if they needed to.
When you went out there, did you take your own photographs documenting your work?
Yes.
And did you also prepare diagrams sort of representing what you found at the scene?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Sir, I'm going to show you
photographs which have been admitted as states 215 to 246. I'll ask you to just look through those yourself and let me know when you're done, please.
Okay, so he says these are high-level stains from 5'8" and up on the wall, like nothing down lower, which is interesting. I'm not sure. It seems. I'm trying to envision how they got here. Okay, obviously this is the insinuation is that they're there from when Sharon was shot. What would the scenario have to have been like? We know that it was a contact wound to her head, and it was an upward angle. Well, not really exit, but just there was. Yeah. Doesn't that put Mike on the other side and her facing the other direction?
Do those photographs look like the ones that you took on that evening?
The only one that questions the first one, and it might have been mine. It's just so generic, I'm not sure that I took it.
Okay, but does it fairly and accurately represent the location?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm showing you states 247 to 249. Do you recognize these three diagrams?
Yes, I do.
Are those diagrams that you prepared?
Yes.
So I think you said your first purpose in going back to the scene that evening was to collect some evidence.
That's correct.
I'm going to put on the overhead states 216.
They had some high ceilings there.
And is your screen on in there?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously one of your duties as a crime scene analyst is to collect evidence, correct?
Yes.
The evidence that you were asked to collect that night, did you find it yourself or was it pointed out to you by homicide detectives and sergeants?
It was indeed pointed out to me by homicide detectives.
Beth,
What was the
thank
nature
you so
of
much.
the evidence?
They were fired 9mm cartridge cases.
Now, looking at 216, what are we looking at in terms of the area of the residence?
This would be the southwest corner of the garage where the water heater is. You can see the water heater by the door. This door here I always refer to as the fire door. It's a thick, solid door that leads from the garage into the interior of the residence. We see a red toolbox right by the water heater. There's also a tray that's used for tools in front of that toolbox by the water heater. Water softener in front of the water heater.
Okay. Can you, I think there's a mouse up there. Can you circle the sort of bluish green toolbox? Just for the members of the jury. And is that the location of one of the cases that you recovered?
Yes.
I'm going to put on the overhead next, states 217. What are we looking at in that photograph?
It's the same area, but it's a different angle. This is actually looking west. So we have the water softener on the right side of the water heater. The tray, this blue tray that holds tools and other items inside, that was by the water heater in this area here. And there was a cartridge case in this tray. There was also a cartridge case down in this area here that we'll see in a moment, I'm sure.
Okay. I'm going to put on the overhead, states 219. Do you see the cartridge case in the blue tray?
Yes, it's right in the very top section, the blue tray by the pliers.
And then this is states 220.
And this is, the softener is right here. The line that goes up is the side of the water softener. This is a pedestal for the water heater. And right here we can see a cartridge case by that empty water container.
So one was in sort of that blue tool tray and one was by that bottle of water next to the water heater?
Correct.
What did you do with those items after they were pointed out to you?
I photographed them, documented them in my notes, and then recovered them.
I'm putting on the overhead, states 221. Does that appear to be one of the items?
Yes.
And this is states 223. Is that the second one?
Yes.
And then you would have impounded those, is that right?
That is correct.
And then they would have been submitted for firearms analysis by another person, correct?
Yes.
You don't do that?
No, I don't.
Okay. So the second reason that you were asked to go out there is because I think you said there were some oily deposits on the wall that the homicide detectives wanted you to look at?
Correct.
You, over the course of your career, did you have occasion to attend autopsies?
Yes.
And any estimate on how many that you went to?
I think it's probably over 100, but I don't know exactly. I didn't keep track of those as well, but I attended autopsies the first maybe 5 or 6 years in my career as a crime scene analyst, and there was probably hundreds of them.
You described the spots earlier as oily deposits. Were they consistent with anything that you had observed at autopsy over the course of your career?
I thought that it was probably cerebral fluid that surrounds the brain, that it came from some kind of brain injury, and kind of painted the walls with these small specks of fluid that leached out into the flat wall paint.
Okay. And had you seen that before at prior scenes?
Yes.
Is that why you thought that was possible in this case?
Yes.
The consistency of cerebral fluid, how would you describe it?
A very light, oily consistency.
Now, when you went about doing sort of the secondary purpose here, not impounding the cartridge cases, but examining the walls, what steps did you go through?
I first examined the walls And this would have been the area where Sharon Randolph was killed, around that area. Examined the walls, took notes on that, drew some diagrams so I could later make the diagrams that you'll see here today. And then I attached little arrows showing directionality if possible, if not just showing the round stains that weren't so directionally. Sometimes when something hits the wall, you can actually tell the direction of it based on the tail that's going from the end of it. These were roundish stains about the size of a quarter. There was a lot of them in that area, and some of the stains did have some directionality with small blood stains inside, very small. They were probably about 1/2 millimeter in diameter, really small stains.
I'm going to put on the overhead states 214. When you got to the residence on the 15th, did you walk this hallway from? I know
He went through on the 15th. What day was she killed?
The homicides, but did you walk this hallway on the 15th?
Definitely.
And were you looking at the walls of the hallway for possible evidence?
Yes.
You said that you ended up focusing in the area where Mrs. Randolph's body was?
Yes, but also this whole hallway, there were those small stains I was referring to earlier, the oily deposits, as well as blood, tissue, hair on this wall here and on this wall here. Also above the bathroom door. And there was a little overhang. I guess it was probably due to air conditioning or something over the master bedroom door. So above your head, a little overhang. Okay. There was stains on that as well.
Okay. And when you walked it, did the detectives tell you where to look, or did you just do that based on your own experience?
I did it myself.
Okay.
They told me that the event happened in the hallway. Obviously, it was a week after I got there. So they just told me the event happened in the hallway, and they pointed out a couple of things, maybe a couple of stains, maybe some hair on the walls. I can't remember specifically, but I examined the area myself.
Okay. And I think you said that ultimately you kind of look at this wall here and this wall as well as you examine this wall. Is that fair?
Yes.
And you actually look at this wall too, which is by the bathroom. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you did sort of a walkthrough. You looked for areas of possible evidence. What would be the next step that you took in investigating this scene?
Again, I would do the notes would follow that. My initial drawings of the scene would follow that. All the little arrows I put up there for directionality would follow that initial process.
And you said you would mark things on the walls that you saw?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to put on the overhead states 225. Let me zoom out just a little bit. So kind of orienting, that appears to be if you're standing in the hallway facing the master bedroom?
Yes, that's correct. So you're looking south right now.
Okay. And when we look at the left of this photograph, there appears to be numerous kind of yellow arrow stickers.
Correct.
Is that your work?
That is my work.
And what are you documenting there that you see?
Those would be the oily stains. And again, some of these stains had blood stains within them as well.
And I'm going to put on the overhead states 228. Is that just a different view?
Yes, this is looking toward the east. So this wall here, we actually saw it in the previous photo, but this is looking east. The doorbell chime is right here on that wall. And also of note, there's a possible impact right here, a bullet impact or a bullet fragment impact.
Okay. And did you measure, or do you know how high up that was?
None of the stains were below 5 feet 8. They were all above that point, and they went all the way, in some cases, to the ceiling. So they're approaching the 12-foot mark.
Okay. And you actually have your measuring tape here?
Yes.
I think I have a close-up of a stain. This would be states 230. Is that sort of a close-up of what you were talking about?
This is actually evidence sample that I collected. You can see tissue on it, possibly a bit of hair. So that was my item number 4.
And you would have impounded that?
Correct.
And that would have been, or could have been submitted for DNA testing?
Correct.
And someone else does that, you collect it, and then someone else tests it?
Yes.
I want to show a different photograph. This is States 236. Is that a different area that you marked as well?
Yes, the number 4 is still visible here. It'll be the same number. I didn't have 2 number 4s. So that's number 4. It's in an area labeled F, like Frank, and it shows numerous impact, or little blood impacts, tissue impacts, and that oily substance impact on the door above the bathroom.
And next I'm going to put on the overhead States 241. And just for orientation purposes, this is the door to the garage?
Yes.
So like from the house going out to the garage?
Correct.
And I see some markings up here on the ceiling, is that fair?
Yes.
And what were you marking up there?
There's blood and tissue up on the air conditioning cover, the air vent cover. There's also hair and a fatty substance up there. And you can see labels here, 2 and 1. Those are my evidence labels. So that's 1 and 2 item that I picked up from the scene, samples from that area.
I'm going to put on the overhead States 242. I guess that way. Can you see the item of evidence there that you're pointing at is like a hair and a little bit of tissue?
That's correct, right there. And that would be on the metal portion of that air vent intake.
And this is States 243.
Little fatty deposit right here again on that. It's metal. It's highly gloss paint. Yes.
And so ultimately, after you do all these markings and measurements, you prepare diagrams to represent what you found?
Correct. I saw a photo in there that you had just put away. It shows the oily stains are extremely difficult to photograph. And this photo right here shows about what we're looking at with them. If I use the flash on them, as we typically do inside, it completely drowned those oily stains away. And this is kind of what we were looking at when we just come here. You can see little round stains here. There's a few of them, but they're extremely difficult to photograph. They only showed up on these ambient light shots where you use the light inside the house that's there already to show it.
So this is why they were missed the first
for the
time
record,
around.
this is States 244. So what you're pointing out are sort of these shinier circular shaped
Yes.
things? Is
Yes.
that fair?
It-
Okay. And so that's what you were analyzing in order to try to determine like a placement of when a shot was inflicted? Is that
Correct.
right? Part of that was doing diagrams of the evidence that you located?
Yes.
So let's see. I will start with this is States Exhibit 248. And to orient us, just for 1 second, I'm going to put side by side 214, which is the crime scene diagram.
Okay. If you flipped it over there, that would be more appropriate.
Okay, perfect. So we have 214 on the right, and then 248 is on the left. And so the vantage point here is looking towards the master bedroom. Is that right?
That's correct. And the master bedroom is right here. The doorway to the master bedroom is right here. This would be the door to the master bedroom.
Okay. And so you have marked on 248, or your diagram on 248 has areas marked D, E, and F. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so that's where you were noting the oily deposits that you were speaking of earlier in your testimony?
Yes, these, of course, they weren't laid out in square. That was just my area for them. They they would have been a different pattern altogether. I just wanted to measure in how big these areas were and put them on the wall. So D would be the east wall of the north-south hallway. E is that little overhang over the master bedroom entry area. And F would be the wall just above the bathroom door. The south wall of the east-west hallway is right here.
Now, on the south wall, did you find any tissue or blood or oily deposits or anything like that that you noticed when you were there on the 15th?
No, there was absolutely nothing on that wall, and that kind of helped me decide where that shooting took place.
Okay. And so I think you said, like, obviously they weren't deposited in perfect squares or like
Correct.
a rectangle and a square, but they were generally in these areas of D, E, and F.
Correct.
And so that's what you're representing in 248.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to put, well, actually, sorry, if I could just go back 1 second to 248. You made measurements on these of how high up they were. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what is the measurement?
They would actually be in one of the diagrams. I'm not sure which one, but I actually have all of those measured.
Okay, let me zoom in here. You measured, like, for instance, on these diagrams, you would measure where the overhang was, and it would be 9 feet.
That's correct.
9 feet 3
Yes.
inches or 8 feet 6 inches, that
Like,
type of thing.
Yeah, that like section D, or sorry, area E went 9'3", if I'm reading it right.
Yeah.
9'3" high, and it was as low as 8'6" above that overhang.
Okay, and you did the same thing for F as well. You measured in as high as 9 feet or 7 feet 3 inches.
Yes.
So let me now put on side by side states 247. Oops. Okay. So this you have labeled as the east wall.
Correct.
And looking at the other diagram, can you kind of point out where this is?
Yes, this would be the east wall right here. Okay. And there's the door jamb that you can kind of see. Area D is right against this door jamb here, and that door is right here.
So this door corresponds to this door?
Correct.
Okay. And so you looked at this east wall for those same oily deposits or evidence of gunshot wounds or some high velocity injury.
Yes.
And you also, with area D, measured in how high up they were?
Yes.
And I think that's as low as 5 feet 9 inches?
Right.
And then it looks like you also labeled on your diagram here, item 4, hair and tissue.
Correct.
And that was 8 feet 3 inches up?
Yes.
And then some of the deposits went as high up as 9 feet 6 inches?
Yes.
And again, that's along this wall right here.
That is correct.
Lastly, I'd like to put on the overhead states 249. Now, looking at our diagram of the house, where is this wall?
That is right here. It's this would be the east-west hallway, and that is the north wall of the east-west hallway.
Okay, so you're not talking about this wall right here, you're talking about this side of it, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and in terms of what you saw on this wall, you also saw some of those same deposits, and then I think you took a blood sample, and you have that as item 3?
That's correct.
And then you measured out other items of evidence that you found?
Yes, I showed where other small blood drops were here, and in this section called A right here. Also, a continuation would be up to the air conditioning vent as well.
And it looks like at the air conditioning vent, you collected another item of evidence that was yellow fatty tissue?
Right, we looked at those photos earlier. One was a head hair, I believe, and the other was fatty tissue from the air conditioning vents here and here.
Okay, and so you were able to make observations of this scene as to all of those walls and look at the evidence itself. First, in terms of like what you observed on the wall, was it consistent with like a high velocity injury like a gunshot wound?
Yes.
And when you were going there on the 15th, was part of the question for homicide detectives about like where Sharon Randolph might have been when she was shot?
Yes.
And what determination did you make based on what you saw?
I would have put her shooting right near the bathroom, not too far from that door, but right in this area here, about where her knees would be, right in that area.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you found an absence of any material on that south wall. Would that be right?
It would be the south wall of the east-west hallway. Yes, there was an absence, and that's one of the reasons I came to that determination. If there was marks on that wall, I would have put her further down this way. But because that wall was completely shielded from any kind of debris hitting it, I'm pretty confident that it happened past that south wall.
Okay, and so you mean past this wall right here?
Yes.
And so somewhere beyond that wall is where she got shot?
Correct.
Do you know which way she was facing, or can you make any kind of determination like that?
I would say that she was heading toward the master bedroom in a southern direction. The reason for that is because of where the wound was on the head. It was on the right side, and we have all this debris coming out this way toward that wall, toward this wall, toward this wall. And if it was any other way, I don't believe it could have happened that. And it couldn't have deposited that blood, the tissue, the oily deposits. It couldn't have been on those walls if she was facing another way.
Court's indulgence. I'll pass the witness, Rory.
So who's doing cross on this one? Josh again. Ooh, he's angry.
Again, I've previously shown to the prosecution what's been marked as defense proposed, F through Q. I don't believe there's an objection. I move for their admission.
F through Q?
Yes.
No objection, Your Honor. Okay. F through Q will be admitted without objection.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. McPhail.
Hi.
How is retirement treating you?
I'm still working.
That's the question the prosecution should have asked.
In the time that you worked for Metro, I'm sure you know that you have developed a reputation as one of the finest crime scene analysts that ever worked at Metro. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, but what an honor. Thank you.
Buttering him up.
And you've worked a lot of crime scenes.
Yes.
With a lot of crime scene analysts.
Yes.
Certainly you had a sterling career prior to retirement. You'd agree with that, right?
Yes.
Okay. There are limitations, however, no matter how good you are as a crime scene analyst, to what you can accomplish at a scene. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
For instance, if Mr. Orem finally had enough of me talking and stood up and whacked me in the back of the head, there may be some forensic evidence left behind on the ground around us, right?
We could hope.
With what? His hand?
I don't know, a baseball bat.
Baseball bat, yes. I would expect that.
If he shot me with a semi-automatic handgun.
Yes.
And then ran out the door.
Yes.
Maybe some
you would
sound bites
expect
here.
that there were instrumentalities of what he had done left behind, right?
Yes.
And there would be actual physical evidence for my injuries, right?
Yes, a gunshot wound for sure.
Okay. Would you agree with me that in that same scenario, he's finally had enough of me and he shoots me in the back with a semi-automatic handgun, and then all the instruments of the shooting, the gun, the casings, the bullet, are cleaned up and taken out of here, and the blood deposited behind is cleaned up, and it's not here anymore, you probably wouldn't be able to tell us nearly as much about the incident, would you?
You're absolutely right. That'd be a very difficult situation.
Okay. And as a crime scene analyst, the goal is to get to a scene as soon as possible after the incident, right?
Yes.
And to get to a scene that's been preserved to the best of the ability of those preserving it, right?
Yes.
Because if anything has moved within that scene, it can tarnish the investigation, right?
Yes.
And if things aren't preserved properly or documented and collected properly, that can make it really difficult to go back in time and depict what accurately happened. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. I want to direct your attention to your involvement in this case. You did not respond to the initial shooting scene, right?
That is correct.
You're familiar with a guy by the name of Gary Reed, now deceased, correct?
Yes.
You worked with him for a number of years?
Yes.
And you know a crime scene analyst by the name of Jeff Smith, don't you?
Yes.
And you knew a crime scene analyst by the name of Chelsea Collins?
Yes.
You're aware, as part of your involvement in this case, that they responded to the original crime scene.
Yes.
And they had the obligation, the duty at that scene to document, collect, and preserve the evidence close in time to the shooting. You agree with that?
Yes.
You indicated to us on direct examination there were a number of things that were apparent to you when you responded to the scene that you photographed and that you collected, right?
Correct.
Certainly items of physical evidence that you located, right?
Yes.
In fact, that was pointed out to you by homicide detectives, right?
The cartridge cases, yes.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you first about those. You responded on the 15th of May of 2008, right?
Yes.
And at the time you did, you had information as to the event number of the original event.
Yes.
And you knew that that event had happened on the 8th of May.
Right, a week before.
You knew you were there exactly a week later,
Yes.
correct? You talked to detectives about it, right?
I don't know how much I did, but I'm sure it was mentioned, yes.
Okay. At the time you testified on direct examination a moment ago, you indicated where the body of Sharon Randolph was lying. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
You weren't involved in the investigation to know that that was Sharon Randolph, right?
Correct. It was gained by photos.
Somebody gave you the information of her name, though, right?
Right.
And prior to going into the scene, you talked to detectives about what may be important that you may be there to collect.
Yes.
Specifically, they talked to you about cartridge cases, right?
Yes.
You had an understanding that those were not discovered by crime scene analysts or detectives where they were at the time of the shooting on May 8th, right?
Yes.
All you did is say, that's the cartridge case you're referring to, I'm going to go ahead and impound that now, right?
Yes.
And prior to doing so, you photographed it as it was a week later. Agreed?
Correct.
Okay. When you were present at the scene, you noticed, once you went inside, these oily deposits, right?
Yes.
And from your experience, you believe them to be cerebral fluid.
Yes.
Because it kind of has a almost unique appearance to it, right?
Yes.
It's thicker than water, right?
Yes.
Stickier.
Right.
And you can look at a stain on the wall and say, to me, that looks like cerebral fluid.
I would say that, yes.
You agree that it's easier to see with the eye than, as you just mentioned, to pick up in a photograph.
Correct.
Difficult to photograph, but easy for you to see that day.
Yes.
And you also indicated that there were a number of blood droplets contained within that cerebral fluid.
On some of them, yes.
And you could actually see that with your naked eye.
Yes.
And because of the color of the blood, it picks up a lot easier on a photograph.
Yes.
You actually got up on a ladder, right?
Yes.
And you looked at items of forensic evidence left behind high up on a wall. Agreed?
Yes.
They included fatty tissue, right?
Yes.
That's something that you would have looked for had you been there on May 8th, right?
Yeah, probably.
And if you'd have seen it, you would have photographed it.
Yes.
And you would have impounded it.
Yes.
If you'd have seen those blood droplets, you would have swabbed them, right?
Yes.
And you would have impounded them on May 8th, right?
Yes.
You also located hair up on the wall, right?
Correct.
And you photographed it.
Yes.
And you impounded it.
Yes.
Because it's important.
Yes.
You even located tissue on the wall.
Yes.
And you did the same with that. You photographed it and impounded it.
Yes.
Because that's important for a crime scene analyst to do, right?
Yes.
Okay. You said something interesting on direct examination, and that is, as you looked up and down this hallway, I'm going to flip this back around here, that N arrow at the top on states 214, that indicates north, right?
Yes.
This door, you walk in and out of this door, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's the door from the garage into that north-south hallway.
Yes.
And you walked up and down that hallway.
I did.
When you were there, that hallway was clean, wasn't it?
The floor area was cleaned. I believe the door to the master bedroom was also cleaned off, so there was no blood on that at that time.
Yeah, so you weren't there on May 8th, right?
Correct.
You looked at photographs of May 8th.
Yes.
So you had an opportunity to see that residence in the condition it was in on May 8th in the photographs.
Yes.
And you'd agree with me in those photographs, there's no photographs of those blood droplets, right?
Yes.
No photos of the tissue?
Correct.
No photos of the hair?
Correct.
No photos of the fatty deposits?
Yes.
I want to show you a couple of photographs here. Show you what's first in evidence is defense F. Do you see that initials and personnel number there?
Yes.
You take a picture of that to document that those are your photos, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then the one I'm going to show you what's in evidence is I. You put a scale and some directionality arrows and some letter and number markings on some of those blood droplets, right?
Correct.
I'm going to show you what's in evidence is defense J.
Did he
That's a
sign the
close-up
wall?
of that
Is that what he
same
did?
one. You see those, even without zooming in on defense J, those blood droplets, right?
Yes.
They're obvious to you, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to show you now defense K. Do you see above the door there's a scale with all the arrows, letters, and numbers above that scale?
Yes.
And that's because all of the physical evidence you're referring to was above that height, correct?
Above 5 feet 8, yes. Or, yeah. Was it 6'8"? My mind is slipping. It was either 5 feet 8 or 6 feet 8. I can't remember.
Don't say that on the stand.
If you testified on direct examination and indicated in your report it was 5'8", you wouldn't dispute that.
I would not.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'2".
Okay. Roughly how far is it between your eyes to the top of your head?
Say 3 inches.
Okay. So for someone a couple inches shorter than you, me for instance, my eyes might be about 5'8". Would you agree with that?
Okay.
You wouldn't dispute that, would you?
No.
Okay. You would agree all the evidence that you documented, collected, photographed, and impounded was above that height, right?
Except for the cartridge cases, yes.
Okay. And in fact, a better representation is in defense L. You see there's nothing on those walls below that. See that?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, those walls were clean of anything of evidentiary value when you were there, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
Did you document, collect, or preserve anything of evidentiary value below 5'8" on those walls?
No.
I'm going to show you, you just indicated you reviewed photographs. What's in is defense N. I'm going to zoom in on this one. Do you see that little cartridge case right in front of the door?
Yes.
You saw that photograph prior to going on the 15th, right?
I don't think so. I had no involvement in this case whatsoever until the 15th.
Yeah, but I'm saying prior to going to the scene on the 15th, you looked at the photos from the 8th.
No.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Okay.
That was the first time I saw anything with this scene was on the 15th.
All right, I'm going to show you a photo then, zoomed out from the one I just showed you. Defense M. Do you see that hallway?
Yes.
Do you recognize that as the north-south hallway?
Yes, in the north end of it, the garage door being right here.
That's the door to the garage, right smack dab in the middle, right?
Correct.
You see the way that rug is kind of folded up there?
I do?
You had nothing to do with that, right?
No.
Do you see on, as we look at that photograph, on the left-hand side, some items hanging on the wall?
Yes.
What does it appear to be to you?
Hat, sun hat.
Like a big, brimmed, wide, maybe 24-inch by 24-inch?
20-inch, yeah. 20 to 24-inch, yes.
Okay, let me ask you this. If there was a shooting directly adjacent
Lawyers exaggerate in size.
to that hat on that wall, and there were biological materials as a result of a high-velocity gunshot wound, could they be collected on that hat?
Yes.
Would you be able to examine them?
Yes.
Okay. When you went to that location on the 15th of May, was that hat there?
I don't think it was.
Uh-oh. Looking for pictures.
When you were there on the 15th of May, at the opposite end of that hallway, you agree you documented above eye level the number of arrows, right?
Yes.
At the bottom of that photograph, do you see that doorway?
The doorway to the master bedroom?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you see anything unusual about the carpet?
Yes.
Is there a big old piece cut out of it?
Yes.
When you were there on the 15th, did you see any blood on the floor?
No.
it had been cleaned up, right?
Yes.
Someone had been in there and cleaned up that whole hallway, didn't they?
Yes.
And it appeared to you from eye level down, everything was clear with no items of evidentiary value. Agreed?
Yes.
What about, I'm going to show you what's in evidence as State 55. Do you see that inside of the garage portion of the residence at 6517 Rancho Santa Fe?
Yes.
You see blood all over the floor?
Yes.
When you were there, was that blood there?
I don't believe it was. I don't recall, but I don't believe it was.
Okay. Do you see up at the top there some items laying just outside the door?
Yes.
Looks like a couple bags and a couple toolboxes.
Yes.
Okay. You photographed that same area when you were there on the 15th, didn't you?
Yes.
I'm going to show you defense G. It looks pretty clean in front of that door, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay. You'd agree with me that some of those items have moved, haven't they?
Yes.
You'd agree with me that the photograph that you took on the 15th depicts an entirely different scene than the one that was taken on the 8th, right?
So there have been things moved. I would agree with that.
And when things are moved in a crime scene where you're trying to document, collect, and preserve evidence as it was at the time of the crime, that can lead to some inconsistent findings, right?
Possibly.
And in this case, some of those toolboxes had moved, right?
I think so, yes.
The ground had been cleaned up, hadn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Okay. The blood that was clearly there at both ends of that hallway and in between on the 8th of May was gone when you came, right?
Yes.
When you got there, there was actually other members of law enforcement present, right?
Yes.
You were called there by Detective Dino Kelly, correct?
Yes.
And when you got there, there was a homicide sergeant that was there, right?
Albie, yes.
By the name of Rocky Albie. You knew him, right?
Very well.
May he rest in peace.
Yep.
He's a great guy. He pointed out some items of evidence to you, right?
I can't remember who did it. Whoever pointed out the cartridge cases, it was somebody from the homicide team, but I don't recall who it was.
And you impounded them?
Yes.
And you agree with me that because the area in which you impounded them from had moved in the last week, the cartridge case had presumably moved too?
It's possible. It's certainly possible.
Okay. You'd agree with me that a week later, after items have moved and been cleaned up, it has a lot less evidentiary value to you, doesn't it?
It's a lot more difficult to tell a story if something's been moved, yes.
Right. In other words, if you're looking at forensic evidence in order to prove or disprove a story, if it's been altered, it makes it a lot harder, right?
Yes.
In fact, it's practically impossible, isn't it?
It can be.
Okay. Detective Dino Kelly was present when you arrived, yes?
Yes.
So was Detective Cliff Monk.
Not sure. I know Rob Wilson was, but I'm not sure about Cliff Monk. I'm not saying he wasn't. I just don't remember.
Do you remember that they were conducting something called a walkthrough?
Yes.
And they were videotaping it?
They had just finished when I got there.
Okay. Just so it's clear, you notate in your report when you arrive and when you leave, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, in your report, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you documented as your time of arrival?
I believe it was, if I'm remembering correctly, it was 9:17 p.m.
Okay. If I were to indicate the report said 9:16.
My bad.
About the same. But you agree with me that
all these
that
years later.
time is documented and written in your report at
Yes.
that time, right?
Yes.
You also document when you clear the scene, don't you?
Yes.
And in this case, you documented that you left at 1:06 a.m. Is that right?
That sounds right.
Okay. You were there for a number of hours.
Yes.
And you were putting up all those arrows. Yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And you were photographing them, right?
Yes.
And it was pertaining to what detectives had told you, the area that was important in the case, right?
Honestly, I don't know that they told me anything was important. I prefer to enter something like that with very little knowledge of what happened so I can draw my own conclusions. I was probably given some very basics of the scene, and beyond that, I don't think anybody was too specific.
Okay, I'm going to put on the overhead, and this is the last little thing I'm going to ask you. When you were drawing your own conclusions about what happened, when you were documenting the items of evidentiary value that remained a week later after the homicide, you would agree with me that you took photos of all of the forensic evidence related to blood or tissue or evidence of a shooting, right?
Yes.
Okay. You would agree with me that hat on the wall was gone, right?
I think it was. I don't recall seeing it.
If a hat had been there, would you have looked at it to determine if there was evidentiary value on it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you defense O. This is a still shot from that walkthrough video. You agree with me, the jury's already seen this video, you would agree with me that still shot depicts different items hanging there, right?
The hat is definitely missing.
The hat's been removed, right?
Yes.
And it had been removed prior to your arrival.
Correct.
And as far as you know, that hat was never examined, impounded, tested.
I never read anything about that.
Okay. Do you see the door that's open in that photograph?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you look at the exterior portion of that garage door when you were there on the 15th?
I don't recall.
Let me ask you this. If the door was open as it's depicted in Defense O, and there was someone right adjacent to that door, and they were shot with a gun, and a high velocity impact occurred, could you potentially find some forensic evidence on that door?
You could potentially, yes.
Did you ever look at that side of that door when you were there on the 15th?
I don't know that I did. I can't say I didn't. I just don't recall.
As you sit here today, you can't tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that you looked at it, right?
Correct.
You can tell us the blood that was on the ground had been cleaned when you were there, right?
Yes.
And you can tell us the area and the exterior of that door in the garage had also been cleaned, right?
The only door I know of that was cleaned specifically would have been the master bedroom door.
And I apologize if my question wasn't clear. In Defense G, that area outside the door has been cleaned, yes? Not talking about the door surface.
The blood on the ground appears not to be there anymore, and I do not recall it being there that day.
And it appears to be neat and tidy and swept up, right?
Yeah, somewhat, yeah.
Okay. And you agree there's no blood on that door that you can see in that photo?
That I can see, yes.
And you took that photo?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you the last thing, as I mentioned. This is States 240. That's one of those blood drops, right?
Yes.
Very obvious, correct?
Correct.
You photographed it, yes?
Yes.
Do you see the texture of that paint?
Yes.
What do you refer to that as?
Just textured walls. And the paint itself was a flat beige colored paint.
Okay. The texture, do you refer to it as orange peel?
Oh, you know, I would have just learned something today. I just call it textured wall.
Okay. Yeah. The texturing and the application of paint to it can strengthen that drywall, right?
Yes.
It would make it harder, for instance, to see a mark on it, right?
No, I don't disagree with you there. I think the mark would be obvious, depending on what you're talking about. A bullet strike or something is certainly stronger than that material on the wall, and it would show up.
Okay. And the paint clearly depicts blood quite well.
Yes.
And you'd agree with me, you didn't document, collect, or preserve any blood below eye level?
That's correct.
Court's indulgence.
Court's just handing out indulgences all over the place.
In addition to homicide detectives and investigators that were present, do you recall any other people being there?
Cameraman.
Mr. Randolph was there. Like I said, I caught the tail end of that interview we was doing where we walked through the scene. I didn't even catch the tail end of it. They were done by the time I got there. And I believe he was there at some point.
Okay. Do you remember anyone else being there?
No.
Does the name Colleen Meyer mean anything to you?
No.
Okay. How long did it take you to put up all those arrows?
Well, I was there about 3 hours. and it took a good bit of time to document that.
Questions?
I wonder what they're getting at here.
I think Mr. Orm's done as well, Judge.
Great. State, can you read direct?
So, Mr. McPhail, when you were there on the 15th, the request was made from homicide for you to come out there, correct?
Yes.
Then do they limit you in where you can look or where you can work or what you can do to examine the scene?
No, not at all. There's
Do you kind of work independently from them, setting up your own photography, your own process on how you want to do it?
Yes.
Did they restrict you at all in terms of where you could look for blood or tissue or strike marks or anything like that?
No.
You were allowed to look all through that hallway and document whatever you wanted?
Yes.
Okay. You talked about on cross-examination how everything you saw was sort of like 5'8", eye level or above, correct?
Correct.
If you had seen anything that looked like blood or cranial fluid or a strike mark or anything of ballistic significance below that, you would have been free to mark that, right?
Yes.
I mean, homicide wouldn't say, hey, we don't want anything below here.
That's correct.
Had you seen something like that, that would have been something that was important to you.
Yes.
And so presumably you documented what you observed when you went there on the 15th, what you were
Yes.
able to observe.
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. Tomczak showed you a picture of that that hallway, and then there was like a hat kind of hanging on the wall.
Yes.
Would you expect like a secondary strike or some sort of mark on a wall if a shot was fired there and in the direction of the hat?
The hat wouldn't have prevented anything from continuing to the wall. That's definite.
So let's talk about cartridge cases. I think you said you've been to many, many scenes.
Yes.
Have there been occasions when you've gone to a shooting scene where you happen to know the number of shots, but you can't find all the cases associated with them?
Yes.
Is that something, I mean, it's not ideal, but is that something that happens sometimes when crime scene analysts are at scenes?
Those are the kind of things that kept me up at night, not the horrific things I saw, but what I might have missed. It happens sometimes. Out of all the many complicated cases I worked, all the scenes, I can't think of one that was perfect. And there's always something that keeps you up at night, and those are the things that do.
And is it because the cartridge cases, they're small and you're in a crowded space, and sometimes you just don't see them all?
They get kicked. They end up being in things, in grass, for example, in rocks, a rock landscape. In this case, it was in a toolbox with a bunch of other small items. And so, yes, you do miss them sometimes. You're not proud of that, but it happens.
Okay. Now, given the location where these were found, kind of like back by the water heater and in that toolbox, that is sort of an area that you may miss if you were processing a scene.
It's certainly possible they did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you interpret like any sort of possible movement of those between the 8th and the 15th, given their location where they were found on the 15th?
Objection, speculation.
Well, how many crime scenes have you been to?
Hundreds, thousands.
Okay. Have there been occasions when you returned to scenes and found additional cartridge cases?
Yes.
And is sometimes that a day or two later?
It's happened, yes.
Okay. And based on that experience, do you have any opinion, I guess I should say, as to whether or not these cartridge cases appeared to have been moved from the 8th to the 15th?
That's my objection to speculation.
That's
he's
the
an
same
expert.
objection.
Not an expert on what things happen when he's not there for a week.
Can't have so much.
Ooh, not an expert on what things happen when he's not there for a week, says Josh. He has an objection, a little bit of an objection. We are getting closer to the verdict. I need to have my eyebrows delivered. I have not ordered them yet. I need to do that right away. I did say, well, I'll wear verdict eyebrows for Brandy's show, where we will be watching the verdict live. Let's see.
Based on the location
Sustained.
where these two additional cartridge cases were found, one's like underneath, or well, there's one in the toolbox that's sort of in one of the pockets for tools, correct?
Yes.
And it's underneath some, or well, next to like, I think it's a pair of pliers or
Yes.
something like that. And then the other one is
I don't
sort
know how
of
to do that.
on the floor of the garage near a bottle of water, kind of tucked back in the corner.
Yes.
Okay. In your experience at crime scenes, are those the types of places that sometimes would be missed in a search?
It's very possible to miss cartridge cases. They bounce around a lot. They can be kicked inadvertently. It's easy to miss some cartridge cases.
And I think, you acknowledge it's not ideal, but sometimes that happens. There's no perfect processing of any crime scene.
Correct.
You can tell us where the cartridge cases were pointed out to you on the 15th of May, right?
Yes.
You have no idea how they got there, right?
Correct.
You have no idea whatsoever if they moved between the 8th and the 15th, correct?
I have no personal knowledge of that.
Okay. You do have personal knowledge that you documented, collected, and preserved evidence on the 15th in that hallway, right?
Yes.
And you also know that that evidence was missed on the 8th, correct?
Yes.
You mentioned a moment ago that the mistakes that can happen keep you up at night, right?
That's what they're going to...
Yes, but not necessarily mistakes. Things that I missed, which become mistakes, yes. Things that I might not be able to understand at the moment, those are the things that keep you up at night.
You would agree with me that the reason those things keep you up at night is because the things you're investigating can be so fundamentally important to a case like this, right?
Yes.
And if things aren't documented, collected, and preserved properly, investigators can reach the wrong result, correct?
Yes.
You would agree with me that when you went back on the 15th, Ms. Weckerly, when she asked you a question, you would have documented, collected, and preserved evidence of blood lower on the wall had you seen it. You agree with that, right?
Yes.
Okay. You would agree with me you didn't see any, right?
Yes.
And you agree with me that that scene had been cleaned between the 8th and the 15th. Yes?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Whoa. That's his equivalent to a mic drop.
The walls on the 15th still had tissue on them, correct?
Correct.
The walls on the 15th still had, well, actually the air conditioning vent had hair,
Yes.
correct? And there were markings of cerebral fluid that you took samples of all along those walls. Is
Correct.
that fair? And all of that existed on the 15th.
Yes.
And had you found any other evidence that existed on the 15th related to ballistics or a gunshot wound or a secondary strike?
Get a
or,
refund on the cleaners.
Anything indicating or anything having any connection to your interpretation of what took place in this hallway, you would have documented it, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Here we go.
The things that you documented, all of them, above eye level, right?
Yes.
Everything below eye level, no blood evidence.
It wasn't there. There were no wipe marks either, as if somebody had cleaned up that area. There was nothing there.
I agree with you. There was nothing there,
As if
right?
someone had cleaned up that area.
The arrows that you put up, did you take them down that night?
I don't think so. I usually don't.
Okay, nothing further.
Nothing else.
Do the ladies and gentlemen of the jury have any questions for this witness? That you can raise
Now the jury gets to go at it.
with your names and your jury number.
Yeah, it was a poor cleanup job. Or maybe they were just short people. Still haven't had any yoga today. Ooh, self-dental exam. Let's do that. Everybody, fingers in the mouth. Oh, yes, yoga music. We should play some yoga music. Maybe that'll help. Let's try... You feeling it, Tommy? You feeling it? Can you hear the music in your headphones? I'll turn it up a bit for you. Let's do it now. Let's right now. Everybody on your feet. Here we go. It's yoga time. Bring out your mats. Let's start with a little stretch, shall we? Roll back the shoulders. Roll back the shoulders. Do a little twist. Oh, something popped. That wasn't good. That wasn't good. We might have to cut it short. Yep. Yeah, we're going to sit down right now. This is no good. This is no good. Oh, man. That's going to need some ice. Sorry there, Tommy. That's all we get. That's all the yoga we get. So, ooh, man. Bad idea.
Okay, sir,
Yes.
would you be able to determine from what position or location of the home was the shooter at when he fired at Sharon Randolph?
I believed that he would have been near the bathroom door, as was she. It was a near contact wound to her head where they found soot deposits at autopsy that indicates the gun was near her. So I would put him near the bathroom door, maybe even inside the bathroom door.
You mentioned on direct examination of the defect on the wall. Did you happen to swab that area for testing?
No, I did obtain a hair and tissue sample in the general area. I did not swab the area. As a matter of fact, after the projectile hit the wall there, it continued, ricocheted off that wall, and went to the pot shelves, and it was recovered that night on the pot shelves. There was 2 fragments of the bullet that night that was recovered.
Pot shelves.
Not of my night, the night of the 8th.
I didn't hear anything about pots.
Why did they call you
Or
a week
pot.
after and not the night of?
I can't answer that. I'm sorry. I just don't know why they didn't.
I wasn't the guy that called me.
State and follow up based on the juror question. Mr. Compton? No. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, do you have any other questions of this witness? Okay. Seeing no response, sir, you are excused. Thank you very much for your testimony here today.
Go back to retirement and enjoy it. We'd actually appreciate if you use the handrail as you step down.
Dr. Gavin, Your Honor.
Okay.
There goes Mr. McPhail. Did have some slip-ups. That's the wrong door. There we go. Ooh, he's got a lab coat on. Oh, I thought we had the guy with the lab coat. I'm like, yes, he shows up with his work outfit on. I think we got a little bit of a sidebar going on here, so we'll just wait for a moment. I'm looking at the verdict eyebrows, and I don't know. Having never ordered eyebrows before. Do you find your right shade? I mean, do you just choose a pair that look good as far as the shape? They're all pretty much. Do we want the big, almost like an inverted V, or more of just like a straight with a little dip on the end? I'm not a pro at this. Oh, you can get a variety styles. That might be better for me. And colors. I'm not going to do the thin ones. I'm going to go, I'm thinking go big or go home. So I'm thinking Koberger style eyebrows. We're really going to get the the full deal. You'll get like the full Monty, so to speak, when it comes to eyebrows. Did she already testify? She looks familiar. Did they recall her? My shade is gray. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. It's almost white. We're trying to match, I guess, the beard and the eyebrows are going to have to be like above my existing eyebrows, right? I'm not supposed to like shave these off and put the other ones on.
Your Honor, was I excused before? Do I need to swear?
You are. Thank you.
No worries. I'm just asking.
No. You swear to God.
I do.
I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Lisa Gavin, Lisa Gavin.
She looks really familiar.
Thank you. Dr. Gavin, we had showed you a computer-generated image that had trajectory patterns, and I think on your direct examination, you said one of them was slightly off, in your opinion, medically, as to its location.
Correct.
I'd like to approach and show you State's Proposed 330. Have you, well, I'll ask you, can you look at that image and see if it accurately depicts the injuries? Location, I should say.
Yes.
Okay. And there's arrows on 330 that indicate directionality. Is that accurate?
This is true.
Yes.
And there are also arrows, I guess, sort of depicting whether it's on the left side or the right side in terms of entry and exit that correspond with sort of the pointed part of the arrow. Is that accurate in your opinion?
Yes.
Is it anatomically accurate in terms of where these injuries were observed on Mr. Miller, presuming the anatomical position?
They're accurate for the areas of entry and exit and the directionality.
Okay. State moves to admit 330.
Same objection. Okay, that objection is overruled. 330 will be admitted.
No, put on the overhead. States 330.
This is what I wanted to see.
Those depict the various entrance and exits on Mr. Miller as well as directionality. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm going to actually, if I could approach again, and have you label the injuries by number, if you could please, on 330. And here's a Sharpie.
So these are with the coroner's corresponding numbers, correct?
Correct. Okay. And again, that doesn't mean sequence of which they were inflicted. Okay, and then is there a way you could mark on here what one is the entry or what is the exit, or is that going to be based on sort of the arrow that's already on there?
I think the arrow implies that.
Okay. So let's look at 330. And this is the first one that we discussed on direct examination is the one that enters, sorry, I always do it the wrong way, on the sort of near his left ear and comes out on his right forehead.
Correct.
And the second one is the left forehead entry. That's the one that's at that really steep angle that lacerates his tongue and comes out his neck.
Correct.
And the third one is the abdominal one that sort of travels up his chest.
Correct.
Exits.
Correct.
And then injury number 4 is the one that was underneath the armpit area, and that's the one with no exit.
Correct.
And injury number 5 is the one that enters from the back of the sort of left elbow area and then comes through the front of his arm.
Yes.
Now those are crazy angles all over the place.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Probably not much
You agree
cross
with me
here.
that States 330, that's not a photograph, right?
Correct.
It's kind of a animated, cartoony type representation of a human being, right?
Yes.
Okay. And there's arrows that go across it, right?
Yes.
State asked you a moment ago if those accurately depict the injuries sustained. You'd agree with me there's no injuries in that cartoon
Correct.
animation, right?
Correct.
In fact, there's no entrance and exit identified at all, correct?
Correct.
There's directionality arrows, as you previously testified to, right?
Yes.
Okay. Looks like our cartoon guy's wearing a belt and kind of some ripped jeans. You didn't make those decisions about how to dress up our cartoon guy, did you?
No.
Okay. But you've been shown this
Like the
cartoon
Hulk.
previously, right?
Yes.
In fact, you were presented with a cartoon on direct examination today by the state where you pointed out that their representation was
cartoon.
wrong, right?
Yes.
And in fact, you had to leave to fix it and come back so you could testify to it, right?
Yes.
And if we're being honest about it, earlier today isn't the first time they showed you a cartoon representation similar to this, right?
Correct.
A couple weeks ago, you met with the state in something called a pretrial conference.
Correct.
And they showed you a cartoon guy then, too, right?
Right.
Okay. At that time, you said, hey, you got it wrong, you need to fix it, right?
Correct.
And even when they fixed it today, they still had it wrong, right?
Correct.
You'd agree with me the photographs of the actual injuries and your testimony about their trajectory is accurate medically, right?
The photographs depict the injuries.
And your testimony about it is accurate medically, right?
Correct.
You'd agree with me that cartoon guy doesn't really offer much to that testimony, right?
The trajectory. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Council approach.
Okay, guys, as they're talking about these important matters, I'm trying to sort out which eyebrows I need. Dark brown, black, or just brown. Brown would look a little funny. White, says Mrs. R.A. She said white. Mrs. R.A. said that. You put them over your existing brows. Like, are you talking about over, like, literally I make them on top of, or there's, like, my eyebrows and then above them?
You agree with me that
I'm going to do this wrong. You
Mr.
guys will never let me live this
animated
down.
cartoon guy here doesn't add anything to your medical testimony about the trajectory. Your testimony is the same, right?
Regarding trajectory, yes.
Okay. And you'd agree with me that our animated cartoon man here doesn't actually depict a single injury, does it?
Say again, please.
Doesn't depict a single injury, does it?
Correct. He doesn't have injuries on him.
Okay. Nothing further.
Yeah.
I just heard a buffer sound. Hang on one second.
So at the coroner's office, are there, occasionally do the doctors use blank drawings that are depicting, sort of a generalized person in order to mark where injuries are?
Yes.
And this would be States 330, similar to that, right? And sometimes doctors will use those blank drawings to sort of put all of the injuries onto one image. Is that fair?
Yes.
And so States 330 just gives you sort of a summary of the location of all of those injuries. Is that right?
Yes.
And while it doesn't have like the gunshot wound depicted on it, it certainly is accurate in terms of directionality and trajectory, I should say.
Yes.
And location of the injury.
Yes.
And then the arrows tell you where the entrance and exits are in conjunction, of course, with your testimony and the photographs. Is that fair?
The length of it does, and then the point of the arrow indicates that direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you, ladies and gentlemen, the jury have any other questions for Dr. Gatt? If you could write your question on the whole sheet of paper with your
More jury questions.
your name and your badge number.
Okay, I think I know how to share this. Hang on one second. Send list to others. Okay. Copy link. I'm trying to share a list of the eyebrows that I found that I thought were the best. This is an Amazon list, and I think this list is editable by you guys, so you can add something to it. So if they're not the right ones, please let me know. I want to get the right eyebrows. You guys, this is my color. This is how I look. So get your screenshot. What would go well with this? If I buy a whole bunch, you can make bangs. It's my understanding that this is not actually like eyebrow. It's just a tattoo, like a temporary tattoo. I'm not getting like implants or something just for the verdict. Do they have salt and pepper? That would be good. I have not been able to find any. And I searched for bushy, and apparently these eyebrows, they don't really make them in bushy styles.
Dr. Gavin, did you test the gloves found on Mr. Miller for gunpowder or soot?
Boom.
Our office doesn't test for any of those kinds of things. That's done by the crime lab.
Dr. Gavin, can you state gunshot number 5, the entrance wound again? It seems the arrow's going the wrong way.
It's the way it looks in the photo because it's facing towards you in that anatomical position, but it's coming in from the back of the elbow and heading towards you, and so that's why it looks like the arrow is pointing towards you, because anatomically it's going kind of back to front.
Any follow-up based on the jury questions? Defense?
Not one.
Anything else from the ladies and gentlemen jury? Have any further questions? For
Not a one, he says.
Okay, seeing no response, thank you very much, Dr.
Yeah, that was a big,
Thank you
that's
very
not my
much.
job. Wonder if the state's saying, I wonder if we should have brought that up, or I wonder if they were tested. Because we didn't hear anything about GSR pretty much in any of
Ladies and
this.
gentlemen, those are all the witnesses that we have for you today. I swear to you, we are bringing this to a close. I swear to you that we are getting close. So we
Judge
are going to
swearing a
take
lot now.
our weekend recess. During this recess, you must not discuss or communicate with anyone, including fellow jurors, in any way regarding this case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. You must not read, watch, or listen to news or media accounts or commentary about the case. You must not do any research, such as consult dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. You must not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. And you must not form or express any opinion regarding this case until it's finally submitted to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be in recess until Monday morning at 10:30.
My favorite part is
All rise for the jury.
you must not form or express any opinion. All right. So let's see. Let me look at the list. Did you guys change it at all? Well, there's a lot of people looking at it right now, I think. I want to participate the best I can in this. So please just let me know what eyebrows would be most appropriate. And I realize that it's not necessarily going for the most glamorous look. I realize I might sort of go with thick black. I can't find thicker than this. The one I found was Bliss and Beyond USA, men's waterproof eyebrow tattoo stickers. That's the best. Okay. I'm getting all these new participants joined the wish list. Okay, let's see. Nicole just sent me an image for how it should look. Oh wow. Who is this? Okay. Who is this guy? Because he's got some serious eyebrow game going on. It looks like somebody out of a movie, honestly. Nobody does that in real life. That's like Wolverine style. Next level for sure. If you can let me know if you're able to find a better, bushier eyebrow. I realize men's eyebrows apparently are more bushier. If Koberger is like the Greek version of perfect eyebrows, bushy eyebrows are better in this situation. She talks so fast it's hard to understand. The judge is really quick, especially, and she reads that so many times. Yes, Nicole. No, that's probably too much. That's a little bit too much. Hey, Chrissy, I'm willing to play the game. I realize Brandy has her rules, and if I want to be on the show, I have to play along. So I'll do that. I'm going to receive so many eyebrows. This doesn't. I don't know how a wish list works. I'm just putting this on there to tell me which ones I should buy. If you guys can correct the list, I will buy the right ones. You don't need to buy me any eyebrows. Is it not? It's not changing. So are these the right ones? The ones on top? I got a perfect on the bottom one. Somebody said perfect. Search novelty eyebrows. Little Miss, I'd like to be in control of this one. Make a poll, please. I don't know how to word the poll because I don't know the terminology. Gene Wilder. Those eyebrows are better. Or the best eyebrows better. You don't need to buy me any eyebrows. Famous last words, right? It said that, let's see, it said send list to others, and it says invite someone to view only or view and edit. And I selected view and edit, which says people can add or remove items from your list.
Any of them. They know this.
Yeah. Anyway, that was Tommy from a different video. Let's get ready for today's session. Okay, I think we got Amber calling in. Just 1 second. Let's see if she has some recommendations here. Hey, Amber, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Have you refreshed your list?
How do I... It's not dynamic. It doesn't just automatically fix. Holy cow. Okay. Who put the pipe on there? The guy with the pipe.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Self-adhesive fake eyebrows. Those might be good. They look like the ones in Nicole's picture. That's a pretty good set. I could go with one of those. I'd be more inclined to use the just little adhesive ones than the tattoo, come to think of it. But yeah, that's what I had in mind. I knew you guys could search better than me. Let's see here.
I even found you salt and pepper one.
Let's see if I can find a good... Oh, right here. Check this out. This might be the game. Can you guys see my screen? Right here. Is that too much? This is very much, I think I might be able to do those. Do they come off after, after some work? They better stay. They better be like instantly removable.
Yeah, the tattoo ones are going to take a little bit of scrubbing to get off.
Okay.
Maybe a little alcohol or, elbow grease.
All right. I think I'm going to get this pair right here. I wish my eyes would look just as piercing as this old man's in the demo, but they rarely look as good as the guy in the photoshopped version. Okay, when will it get here? It has to be Prime. Free delivery Wednesday. Buy it now. Okay, don't zoom into my card, guys. Don't look at this. It's a secret. Hang on. To switch with the card that Mrs. R.A. is not going to be upset about. That one. She's like, you bought what? Eyebrows. Okay. Place your order. Make sure they arrive. Yes, Prime delivery. I'm going with the salt and pepper. These are nice. I hope they're reusable too, because I want order placed. Boom. There we go. Eyebrows problem solved. It will match the goatee. And nobody tell Brandy. Nobody tell Brandy. It'll be a secret. So.
But you do realize you can just rewind this entire live stream and just come see it.
But Brandy's busy. I know she likes to watch, and she's busy, but I don't think she will. She's getting ready for her own show. And because this is something, she's already watched this once, so she's not going to rewatch this because she watched it live. So I think we're good. It'll be a surprise. This is key. I need everyone. Okay, please, everyone, wherever you are, unless you're driving, and if you're driving, I need you to think of yourself as doing this. Please raise your right hand and face me, or face the phone, or face YouTube, and repeat after me. I solemnly swear that I will not reveal the style, color, or general description of the eyebrows Recovery Addict promises to wear on Brandy's live stream. So help me, YouTube. Okay, everyone did that? Good. All right. It's now official. You've all been solemnly sworn in. This should be a complete surprise to Brandy then. I appreciate your help on this one. No swearing. No, I'm not going to do it, says Golden Mare. So help me, YouTube. That's how you end any live stream swear. Okay. They're coming. They're on the way. We just can't have a verdict before Wednesday. And I think that'll be all right. I think we'll be good that way. All right.
I just have to know what Mrs. RA's reaction is to those. So are you going to wait to show her what you got until they come in, or are you going to show her the picture?
Well, she did pop her head in the door and say, hey, I'm taking my son to work. And I had eyebrows all over on the screen. I was shopping for eyebrows. And she said to get white. So I know that she knows I'm getting them. But yeah. So.
All right. I got to get back to work.
All right. Thanks, Amber. Thanks for calling in. Catch you later. Bye. All right. We're ready for that. We're also ready for court to start in Nevada, which is in about an hour. It's about an hour. So we've got a little bit of time and it will be live. I think I was going to... Here's what happens. Brandy is coming up. It's soon, probably sooner than she thinks. She's coming up on her 10,000th subscriber mark, which is just an enormous goal to hit, and it's just awesome. And honestly, I think the time that she spent hitting 10,000 is going to be much. The time she spent getting to 10,000 is going to be less than the time she spends getting from 10,000 to 20,000. I think she's just going to explode. She's doing such a great job. But on her 10,000th live stream, she wanted to give out some stuff. And I thought it would be awesome if we could support her to get some prizes that she can give out. But I'm not sure if I should do like I've got my own gear. I could send that. But that's sort of weird to advertise my stuff on her channel for her thing. So I thought I could do like a special, Brandy version of my gear. So it would be like a 13th Addict sticker or something like that, something you could only get there, that's not available anywhere else. But I'd love your input. Please let me know. Yeah, the 10,000 party is going to be awesome. She's got huge plans for it. I'd like to contribute in some way so that as many people as possible could get some prizes. Let's see. That one's done. Let me get rid of this guy. Don't want this up. So I could do like 13th Addict with the courthouses underneath. And I was thinking of actually doing like holographic stickers. So this like a rainbow type, that would be fun. But how big of a sticker, I can show you. I was thinking like a 2-inch by 9-inch sticker that says 13th Addicts on it. And then it had the membership things. But I was wondering if I should do like a blend of her logo and my logo, so it like alternates back and forth. The membership logo. I think that'll work. I'll start working on that. Let's see. I want a fleece throw with your courthouse and Brandy's 13th Addict logo. I'll have to talk to her about that because we'd have to jointly to do that. I can't just steal her artwork, but I think for some stickers, if I send her the stickers to give away for her 10,000, I think she'll be okay with that. Okay. Let's see. When are you getting them? When are we going into verdict watch? Kelly, we have not yet finished. The state is not yet finished, but I think they're going to rest today. If the state rests today, the eyebrows arrive Wednesday, so in 2 days. So we need to have at least 2 days of defense. And I'm pretty sure that the defense is going to call some witnesses, and they'll take about a week. So I think it's perfect timing. Now you have to delete this recording. The membership logo sounds like a good idea. So, Michelle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the colors of my membership and then the colors of Brandy's membership logo, because I think they follow the same pattern. I'll have to check. I don't know. Does hers end in purple? I think they follow the same. Maybe they're not, but I'll pull up hers and mine, and we'll sort of put them together, and it'll say 13th Addicts on it somewhere. Is it 13th Addict or 13th Addicts, plural? Who's Red Pen? You're the English teacher. Which one would be correct? 13th jurors or recovery juror. Would that be better? A 13th addict? Oh no. Something with the eyebrows. We need something with the eyebrows. Sonia, it's going to be a surprise. Just stick around for the verdict watch for this trial, which will be aired. I will be on Brandy Churchwell's channel for the verdict. So apparently there are some requirements, some dress requirements for that. Yes, if they don't come in before the verdict watch, I have to use a permanent marker. Pray for my delivery man and for me, if that's the case. Heidi, that's not my concern, honestly. YouTube has been wonderful for me. Just not just the fun it is, but it's able to pay my bills, which is what I want to do. It's not all about the money, and Brandy is absolutely amazing. If she by far eclipses me on YouTube, I will be cheering every step of the way for her. She's that good. Let's see. How about 13th Addict stickers with eyebrows on it? That's a good idea, Lisa. That's really good. Let me start working on that. Yes, we are one big community. It's like this. The rising tide floats all boats, right? When we can work together on something, I think it benefits all of us. Whether it's, the waves, my boat might be higher than hers at one point and hers higher than me. It doesn't matter. I think we can lift each other and support each other, and it will help everybody. Okay. Nina Canadian says, what does RA's Recovery Addict name mean? Addicted to recovering? I've wondered. Nina, when I first chose it, I chose it because I loved metal detecting, and that's what I wanted to have my channel on YouTube about, metal detecting. I was addicted to recovering artifacts from the ground. Finding history that's been lost to time. So I was the Recovery Addict. It's come to mean something else, and I do also have my own history of fighting an addiction. In my case, it was a video gaming addiction that, it sounds like that, that's not a very serious addiction. For me, it was. And I mean, there were days when I was driving down the freeway, literally, I'm embarrassed to say this, driving down the freeway at 65 miles an hour with a laptop next to me, and I was playing video games as the driver, endangering every single person, myself and every single person around me, because I could not stop playing these video games. It took over my life, and sleep, health, everything. It was bad. So we support people who are recovering from addiction, whatever the addiction may be. And the name sort of stuck. That's the story. Let's see. We have an hour. We have a break. I think we have enough time for a break where we can have lunch. Let's see. Sandra, thank you very much. The channels are we're different. I realize, first of all, I don't have a Lucy cam, and I'm extremely jealous, but different channels and different perspectives, different sense of humor, different style. But I think there's room enough on the internet for both of us, even on rare times like this where we're covering the same case. Usually it doesn't happen like that. Okay. Thank you, Christy. I appreciate all of you. Thanks for your support, honestly. Those that support the channel, either just by being here or by sharing out a link to it, clicking the like button, or supporting it as a member through super chats and super secrets as well. All of you are very much appreciated and loved, honestly. It would not be the same without you, for sure. JT has a puppy cam too with Sir Elton. I saw that. I saw he got that, and it looks great. I did wander in on one of his late night shows, and now I need something. The closest I could do, I can probably get a cow cam, and so I can probably when we set up the cow cam for the Homestead to Hardware store. We might be able to have a live feed to the cows. So we'll see. We'd need audio as well. It can't just be camera. So you need to have the occasional. And the cows are cute. They have like their own drinking fountain. Have you ever seen this? Usually you think of cows just drinking out of like a trough or something or a little stream, but they've got this little drinking fountain that they push their nose into, and then it fills up with water. So it looks like a little pipe, and they walk up to and just stick their nose in there, and they just sit there, and they're like, it just constantly fills as they just like inhale all the water. Quiet on the tee. Mr. Woods is stepping up to drive the fourth ball of the day. Got a slight south wind. Yeah, a golf announcer is just, it's the most chill job ever. That's sort of the sound they make. But the drinking fountain is just so cool. I've just never seen cool technology for cows, and that was it. Iowa with the backyard critter cam says cow cam, heart.
Red heart card suit, red heart card suit, red heart card suit.
They would be Brahma cows too, which are, they have the big hump on the back, which I've tried to it feels like a camel's hump. I mean, assuming, I don't know, I've never felt a camel's hump, but it looks like a camel's hump, and it's pretty cool. But these are the friendliest cows. They just come up and hang out with you. Make that a sound, you mooing? No, let's not make that a thing. That would go all over the internet. All good until they do this. Yes, and they do that a lot. They are fertilizer machines, just nonstop. I was standing next to one, well, sort of behind one, getting a very crucial shot for the other live stream, and they did its business. And it's like, okay, now I need a hose to wash off my legs. That it was that bad.
Call from
Ivan. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Happy Monday. How's the weekend?
It's going well. Just getting ready for a little bit of lunch break. Trying to think. Actually, I've got some spicy maple bourbon pickles chilling in the fridge, and that's definitely going to be the main course. So whatever I eat with the pickles, that'll be my lunch.
So you re-upped over the weekend, huh?
I had 2 jars, and I'm down to 1. So yeah, I bought 2 on Saturday, and the first one disappeared. It
Good
happens.
deal. I just wanted to get your take. It's kind of been a little bit of the chatter in this room. Is how do you honestly think the state has presented their case of guilt? Like, if you didn't know what we all know, what do you think?
I think it's been very, very clean, very thorough, especially on clarification when a juror asks a question. They're good at understanding what the juror was trying to ask and getting to that. I think they're lacking a little bit, where they don't have that smoking gun, but they have enough pieces that they should be able to put together a good argument saying this is why you should convict him and find him guilty. At the same time, I as much as I hate and we like to poke fun at Josh and Mr. Bean Counter, they are doing a dang good job. Even though they're very patronizing, they very condescending at times. It's so frustrating when they talk to people like they're 5 years old, and it's but at the same time they're so good.
I think all those even those and but or aside from the facts, I think all of those matter, even though they probably shouldn't. When it comes to juries making up, people are people. We can say it's sort of like when they say unring the bell. Well, nobody can do that, okay? We can say it didn't factor in, but last I checked, we all had, memories and all had a pulse and all were, suffered from the same human condition. And so you can't just pretend and you can give it your best effort and maybe you even think you are, but let's be real, the people are people. So I think all of those intangibles matter. And I think that's why you hear Matthew Harris and Nicole, they all harp on etiquette and behavior for a defendant when it comes to trial. But it seems as if they could take some of that medicine and dish it out to these attorneys, because why? They don't have to act that way. Unless they are just naturally that way, there isn't any strategic advantage. In fact, the opposite. So I just don't get it.
I think it does help to have the jury like you, right?
Right.
And so when Josh got up there the second time with the investigator, the bald guy, who do you say he looked like? Larry somebody?
Larry David, the guy who wrote Seinfeld.
Yeah. So it does look like him. When he got up there and he's like, how's your retirement going? And asking that question, ask the follow-up. Instead, the state had that question in their lap. And that would have been just like a chance for them to be human instead of robotic. And they're looking very robotic. They get up there and say, when did you retire? This date. And they immediately start into something else. The natural thing, the human thing to do is like, how's retirement going? And just be kind for a second and have somebody say, oh, that's thanks for asking. And then
don't they have a paralegal in that office? I mean, what's interesting is when you have like a pair like that, a first and second chair, usually you only get one that's sort of like that, and they kind of play off of each other. You know what I mean? And so it almost can be like a good cop, bad, whatever. Yeah. But like to have them both just at that, just smugness it's so. But they have to have had somebody along the way say, hey, like when you're talking to people and you wonder why they look at you like they want to punch you in the throat. There's something that can be done about that.
Okay, well, that being said, even though we pick up on this, at any given point, they're not being as harsh. I mean, we've seen lawyers who have really been snarky, have just come at and just like with teeth, it has an edge to it.
But all the witnesses are non-confrontational in this. You know what I mean? They're all just, it's like a very milquetoast, witness list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not as if like there's anybody who's like really like trying to give it back to them. You know what I mean? Like, so they aren't reading not only their audience, which is obviously the jury, but they're not even reading the person that they're asking questions to, because like I said, being unnecessarily confrontational or, just out of context sort of snarky is just, I just don't know what you gain by it. Like, it seems like it can only hurt you.
I think this is their style. I think if we watched another case where they were defending, they would be similar. I don't think they're putting on this front just for this case.
So they just naturally suck as people. Like, so that's what we're going with. Like, this is just who they are. Is that what we're going to do?
I wouldn't say that. Here's what I'll say. I think the defense is doing a very good job. So much that I'm nervous. If I were the prosecution, I would be nervous. Because the way they present their story, their version of events that could work is so believable. I mean, so many times the defense got up there and said, hang on, guys, it could have been aliens, and we're like, really? That's what you went with? But they're not doing that. They're saying, hang on, this is just a simple perspective. Just rotate a little bit and say it could have been just a little bit different. And now, oh my goodness, it's not what you thought it was. And it's believable.
Yeah, and like when he was talking to the Larry David guy, when he says, so all you did is X, Y, Z, it's like, come on, man. Like, this guy just gave his whole life to his career. Like, all you did, like, could you, minimize or, be more condescending about what his actual role was if you even tried? Surprised he didn't say, what was your grade point average?
No, they haven't been barbed, those jabs. I don't know. I will say they could have done a lot better job to not look as a little mean as they do, but at the same time they're being overly kind when they're being mean. So it's like, oh.
Well, I guess what
I hate to have to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you this.
Yeah.
that
I don't mean to nitpick. Anytime somebody apologizes before they're about to do, it's a completely contrived and isn't believable at all. Like, when you have to preface your comments with an apology for even going there, it's a bad look. Bad
I'm
look.
just saying they do that, but at the same time, they also interject those how is retirement type questions, which is more human than we're getting from the prosecution, which is just read off the bullet point list.
But like you said, it sounds like Mark Zuckerberg's asking it, and like a droid. It's like they're asking that question, but like could they be less sincere about it?
Yeah.
Like,
here's what I think is going to happen. The prosecution is going to redeem themselves because in closing, we're going to get another amazing, and I don't say this often, amazing PowerPoint presentation from them. Their open PowerPoint was that was a home run. If they can do that again, that just might put the bow on it, nicely tagged, bagged, and out the door. Defense should not touch another computer for the rest of the trial. Really, they suck at that part. But they're doing a good job on the questioning, and they're doing a good job at keeping that other narrative going and plausible, and saying, hey, keep that reasonable doubt in your mind. But I don't know.
I think what makes it irritating is I think it's a winnable case for them, and I think they're sort of self-sabotaging,
which is scary
with their attitude. That's all.
It's winnable.
I think
it's winnable because they've taken his 6 wives and parsed them all out and say we're only going to look at number 6. If they had to look at all 6 wives and say we're looking at the whole picture, this is not a winnable case. There's no way that people are going to say, yeah, fourth time unlucky. They just keep dying on you, and you're not going to get there. But the way the system works, I think they do have a chance at him actually getting off. Not just lowering down to a life sentence instead of death penalty, but actually getting off on this case.
Well, that's why I worry about, like I said earlier in the chat, I wonder, like, if we really do feel like none of these jurors know anything about the past. Like, if so, like, maybe I'm just being cynical about it because, like I said, I know we all have the same temptations and human condition that we struggle with. So I hope all 12 are playing by the book or by the letter of the law. But it's just, you just never know, I guess. So. Yeah.
We did have a suggestion this morning that I'm really keen to follow up on, and that is to get Dr. G in here to talk about the walkthrough video, specifically Tommy on the walkthrough video. That I think is going to be the linchpin or the key piece of evidence that the jury's really deliberating on. Everything else is just facts, and it can go either way.
Voluntarily do that? Like what? At whose request did he?
Yes. Well, he sort of befriended that one. In the questioning when he was sitting in the police station, the guy that was sitting opposite him. That's the guy that said, "Hey, would you do this for us?" And he said yes. But if we can get Dr. G to look at that, that would be awesome. I'd love to bring him on. I think Dr. G should do his own video on that because it's content-wise. So there's enough to do a full video on it, but I'd love to bring him on and talk to him myself as well. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he could probably go a half hour on that.
Ivan, speaking of half an hour, that's about how much lunchtime I'm going to have left. If we could talk, so we're going to wrap it up.
Thanks for taking the call.
All right,
thanks for taking
we'll see
it.
Ivan. Have a good one. Bye. All right, we're going to end it here and catch up with lunch. Also, Brandy is going live as well, so you're welcome to watch either here or over on Brandy's channel, whichever you find more comfortable, or float back and forth between the two. Sometimes that's fun as well. They're not presented with a respectful voice like you. Yeah, we try to be a little nicer here than what they do. I heard how's retirement as we know you're obsolete and irrelevant, and it's because of the bias I formed due to his smarmy manner. Yeah, it could have been the jab as well, for sure. Dr. G, I think he's working right now, like in his clinical practice. His Fridays are the days when he's really available for video. Dr. G actually mentioning you in one of his videos. Oh, thank you. That is awesome. He does an amazing job. I think we'll have to see if we can get him on. I'll see if I can send him a text and see what his week is looking like. Let's see. I think that's all. I don't know I don't think we'll be in a verdict by Friday, would we? I think we'd be in a verdict at the end of the week. So maybe Dr. G at the end of the week. I'd love to have him on before verdict watch, especially before I put my eyebrows on. Before I lose all respectability. You should do a collab with him on the video and interview content for you both. He has great stuff. He doesn't need me. He's got some good stuff. All right. Hey, Mrs. R.A. I might have bought some eyebrows. Do you guys know what she just said? She said, "You don't think the God-given ones you have are big enough?" That's something to that nature. Yeah. So I'm not sure. Brandy might be on. Is she on in about half an hour? I think she's on at 1. Not yet. She'll be on in 22 minutes. I think we're both going to go live at the same time, 1 o'clock. So I've got to break here. We've got to play some music so that I can go eat my pickles and get some lunch and get ready for the second half of the day, which will follow live, as Las Vegas apparently has not had so much rain that they're drowned out. They're going to continue the court schedule as possible. Oh, just wait. This is all right. When I say eyebrows, I mean eyebrows. I went all out. It's Koberger will be jealous. They're good. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone for being here. Thank you. This is the best place on YouTube to watch true crime, and it's all because of you. It would not be the same without you. Tonight, when you go home, please hug the people you love, smile at someone, make their day just a little bit better, and please stay safe till we go live again in about 20 minutes. About 20 minutes. That's all the time we have. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later. The verdict will be on Brandy's channel, but I'll be live on that channel. That's where we'll be. I don't think we're going to do both. you guys after lunch.